Okay, we're ready to come to order for the pick up where we left off for our hearing. The secretary call the roll.
Chairperson Barney,
Here.
Vice Chairperson Flewellis.
Here.
All right, motion carries.
We should probably make note that the hearing will have to conclude a little before 4 because there's a second hearing today, and that's about the pay plan. It's the last day we can address the pay plan as a commission prior to the Board of Aldermen receiving it in a timely way before they take a break. So from there, I'll let our judge tell you the rest of the time plan.
All right, so it's now a little bit after 11:01 I have. Because we're starting a little bit later, the plan is to go 2 hours and take our lunch break at 1 o'clock, and then take an hour for lunch, and probably break a little bit before 1. We'll try to find, again, a logical place. If a witness is finished, great. If not, a logical place to stop in a witness's testimony, break for that hour and 10 minutes for lunch, come back at 2 o'clock, and then go until, again, try to find a logical place to stop sometime between 4:30 and 10 minutes to 4, so that the commission can then proceed, and people who want to leave this hearing can leave, and people who want to attend the next hearing will be able to come on in. Of course, the doors are open, but we don't know how many people will be in here at like 4 o'clock. Maybe nobody, we'll see, other than the parties. So the parties both ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, first thing we're going to take up is the motion that was discussed at the previous hearing. The city filed a motion headed motion in limine to exclude evidence relating to political motivation or uneven enforcement of vehicle policy. But the city, I thought, oh, no, that's not it. I'm sorry. Second motion filed by the city. This was a motion filed by the city, the appointing authority, motion to enforce hearing evidentiary process, I'm sorry. And that one included in paragraph 11 a suggestion that, and the appointing authority moved the commission and the hearing officer to place reasonable limitations on the hearing with suggested time limits. Now, the motion suggests 45 minutes for direct examination, 30 minutes for cross, 20 minutes for redirect, and a 20-minute time limit for closing arguments. So briefly, we'll hear from each side as to that motion. First, for the city.
Yes, Your Honor. I don't want to belabor it too much. I mean, I think we made our points in the motion itself, but I would point out the witness that we called at the last time we were here, Mr. Unnerstall. I think the appointing authority, I think we spent maybe a half hour, maybe, in direct examination, and I think cross-examination was close to triple that. So I just think that, given the length that the hearing has already gone, and the repetitive nature of some of the objections and the arguments as to those things even after they're sustained, I would just ask the court to enforce the rules and impose the reasonable time limits that we have suggested, and even if not, if those don't seem amenable to the commission, that there could be some time limits that would be imposed.
All right. For Ms. Gray, Mr. Norwood.
If I may, we oppose any limits at this juncture. We had, of course, my client on, who was on for a total of 2 days, and I think counsel had an ample opportunity to cross-examine her, even though he called her as a witness. And so these limits, particularly the the limits imposed with respect to their witnesses, because effectively, what they're saying is that they get 65 minutes and we get 30 minutes, when we obviously, from a due process standpoint, should have a right to thoroughly cross-examine any witnesses they call. I think his calculation on Mr. Understall is exaggerated. I thought that examination proceeded fairly quickly. We have a couple of witnesses that we believe that will take some time to examine, assuming they proceed and call who they plan to call. So I think at this juncture, it might be premature. My recommendation, as I did before the last hearing, is to sort of see how it goes, and if it looks like, some unnecessarily extended period of time is happening, then we can revisit it at that point. This is my client's livelihood on the line, and it shouldn't be constrained by, what I would consider, in terms of their proposal, arbitrary limits. I think we should see how it flows, and then if it looks like there's a problem, we can address it at that point.
All right, you said there were some witnesses that are going to take longer?
Yes.
Longer than 45 minutes on direct?
Well,
These are
longer
your
than-
witnesses
this
or
would-
his?
These would be his witnesses. I mean, I understand, for instance, he's calling Mr. Jerry Boyd. He's a significant witness, and he will take some time to examine because there are a lot of areas. And I think Bianca Lambert I understand, is one of their witnesses. She wrote a 6-page summary of a bunch of stuff that involves why she blew the whistle, communications with Mr. Byrd, communications with my client, reported communication. So that's going to take some time to go through that statement alone. So that's why I would suggest we kind of see how it goes and not try to hamstring us in our ability, as this charter permits, to provide an effective defense. And of course, as the court is aware, as Your Honor is aware, that requires some digging with respect to the right to cross-examine.
Well, do you anticipate any time limit that would be enough for you on these witnesses?
I think some of the witnesses will be shorter. Witnesses like Mr. Boyd will be long witnesses.
Well, by long, you mean what?
I would say at least an hour cross-examination.
And Mr. Harris, do you anticipate, in other words, it's your motion, so you're anticipating your direct is not going to be longer than 45 minutes, is that correct?
I mean, I anticipate that it shouldn't take longer than 45 minutes for either of those witnesses.
All right. Neither one of you addressed closing arguments, so I'll give you a brief. Do you want to, is 20 minutes, it's in your motion, that's what you're asking for?
Sure,
Will that be enough?
I think 20 minutes is sufficient for a closing argument.
All right. How much, is that enough for you, Mr. Melvin?
Well, I don't think so. I would urge the commissioners and Your Honor to allow at least up to 40 minutes, because there's a lot of dots that need to be connected, in our humble opinion.
Okay. All right. That concludes the arguments on the motion. Well, briefly, the commissioners can talk to each other and decide on what they want to rule on the motion.
Still 35, it still stays in.
Okay. All right. And all right. So the commissioners considering this are going to say the commission is going to rule the motion itself, the time limit set or modified, but the commission is going to impose time limits on the rest of the witnesses. 35 minutes for both direct and cross. 35 minutes for both direct and cross. 20 minutes on redirect, And then, of course, the way the rules are, the cross has to be permitted, but if cross is requested and a reason is given that's sufficient and it's permitted, then it would be the same 20 minutes, all right? So, and then on closing argument, 30 minutes for both sides. Now, the 30 minutes for both sides, and I assume the city would have the option of splitting that if they wish to. The only thing is you can't split it more on the second half
Right.
than the first half, so no more than 15 and 15 on the second half. Second half could not be more than 15 minutes.
Right. I
Okay.
understand.
You need to let us know at the time we do that. Mr. Norwood?
Well, just briefly for the record.
Oh, I did want to say one other thing. Now, if we get to a point where we're cutting either party off, and there is a matter that has not been asked about that is critical, and there's somehow a reason it hadn't been asked about, you'll need to say that at that point. You'll need to say, you'd ask permission to extend it because you need to cover X, Y, or Z, or whatever it might be, and the commission would have to decide whether or not to grant an extension. So, with that provision,
Just for clarification, so with respect to Mr. Boyd, how much do I get, an hour for him? Is that?
no, 35 for each side. 35 for direct. Is he going to be the city's witness?
Yes.
Okay, so 35 for direct, 35 for cross.
Well, and again.
Then 20 for redirect, and if you get recross, 20 for you.
Well, again, but given the substantial areas that need to be covered with him, I would urge the commission to allow more latitude. He is a critical witness. He was the chief investigator. And there are quite a few areas of examination that really renders it impossible for me to cover in 35 minutes.
All right,
And
well,
so-
tell you what, as you say, we'll just have to see how it goes, because the commission has no idea of what any witness is going to say. So
Right.
when you say there's a, we'll just have to see, and obviously you need to try to make your cross, if it's their witness, to the point so that you cover as much as you can.
But again, with all due respect, we have a right to present a defense. He is a key defense player. And what we're urging the commission to do is simply allow up to an hour, which would be 25 minutes beyond, so that we can effectively defend ourselves against his investigation. And we believe we have a constitutional right, we have a charter right to present that defense. And to the extent that any of the rules that have been adopted attempt to curtail that, we have a problem with. Now, some of these other witnesses who are some more marginal players, these might work. But with respect to certain major witnesses like Mr. Boyd, we think that some leniency should be permitted.
Well, I think that would be covered. At the time, Mr. Boyd, is he the next witness, or who's the next?
No.
Would you anticipate him being called today, or when?
Well, it depends. Well,
It depends, okay,
depends.
I understand that. With the time limits now,
I mean, if the time limits work, then we might get to him today. I would anticipate that he would be
All right.
third in line today.
all right, so both sides will get the 35 minutes, and if you get to the end of your 35 minutes and you think you haven't covered something that's critical, you'll need to say, I'm asking for an extension, and at that point in time, we'll have heard an hour and 10 minutes of his testimony. We'll have a little bit better idea of what he's talking about, what he's a witness about. So we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Well, and the only other thing I add is the fact that we're sort of changing the rules in the middle of the game, in that They had ample time to examine my client, as did we on cross. We played at least an hour of Mr. Byrd's testimony. And so, you know, we take issue with the fact that here we are in the middle of this thing, and we're being hamstrung. And that's all I would say about that. And we
All right.
object.
But Mr. Norwood, when you say we're being hamstrung, it's the same time for both sides. So neither side is being restricted any more than the other side. Both sides need to be concise, direct, and to the point in the questions that they ask the witness, and of course, spend their time asking about relevant evidence.
Well, and in our view of the world, we have been focused on relevant evidence, but they have more time with respect to their witnesses because they have the 35 minutes on the front end and they have time on the back end. And
No,
so,
we said they get 35, they get 20, that's 55. You get 35, and if you give us a reason why you need to do cross, you get 20, so you'll both get 55.
well, if the commission is ruling that I'm going to get my 20, then that allows me then to plan accordingly in terms of how I would examine these witnesses. It sounds like what's suggested is that I may or may not get my 20. And therefore, I've got to try to figure out in advance how I'm going to use the 35 and can't assume that I'm going to get the 20. So if I'm assured of getting a 20, that would make my life a lot easier and allow me to represent my client to the fullest extent that due process permits.
I would just say, I mean, this is not unusual. I mean, in courtroom practice and trials, you know, all over the place, you know, the idea of recross is often not allowed, or it's often something that is, you know, you gotta have a reason in order to do it. So I just wanna make clear that this is not, you know, since it's the appointing authority's burden, it's normally how it goes, that you have direct, cross, redirect, and then only recross if there is some reason for recross.
Well, and we object to that. In 38 years of practice, I've been around a lot of trials. I have never, ever, and I'm sure Your Honor has never, ever seen a situation where cross is limited to 35 minutes for material witnesses. This is a unique situation all around. They are trying to not only remove my client, but our position is they're trying to take over the personnel department. This is not your typical proceeding. And in light of that, we're asking for some indulgence to allow the presentation, the full presentation of what we have to present for whatever it's worth. We believe it's highly relevant. And as the commission knows, we are also making a record because who knows where this thing is gonna go. So, and I understand this is taking more time than I thought it would take, but this is where we are. We haven't even gotten to our case. This has all been their case. And so we're just asking for indulgence, which we think due process requires, the charter requires in terms of allowing us to present a full defense, not a summarized defense. And I don't see the burden, particularly now that we've moved through one witness fairly quickly, we've got deposition testimony, and if it looks like it's going off the rails, then yeah. But so far, the 2 days we spent with my client, we didn't complain about that. They had everything they were able to listen from her, as did we. And that's all we're asking for, due process, fairness for this person who is doing a super job for the city, which everybody's acknowledged, to allow her an opportunity to present her case.
All right. All right, with that, then, I think we're ready to continue where we were at. Is that correct?
Yes.
So where were we? Mr. Harris, it's still your case?
I believe,
You were still on cross?
we finished the deposition transcripts, the deposition clips that we were gonna play.
That you were going to
And then
put
now
in.
we have deposition clips to play.
Okay, so you're ready to put them on?
Yes.
All right.
Now, as it relates to the city of St. Louis,
How many years? I mean, I know you had different stints.
Hopefully the director would agree with my statement. Although I've worked in payroll capacities and HR, because of how we are structured, they're kind of like hand in hand. So I like to believe all 8.5+ years I've been.
And have you ever seen a situation like this as it relates to how this matter has progressed up to this point?
Pertaining to a city employee, never, ever. There is no record of a director of personnel ever being charged malfeasance, nonfeasance, or misfeasance.
In your experience, have you seen anybody being charged with disciplinary action associated with an allegation of violation of the city vehicle policy?
No, sir.
Okay. In all of your years?
In all of my years.
All right.
Reflected on the stenographic record.
All the employees of the civil service system.
Okay. All right. But you understood that she had a ton of experience, right?
Yes.
And you learned from her experiences based on that prior experience, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And does she work long hours after hours as well?
Yes, sir.
All right. And so the work that you do is not a question of, oh, it's 5 o'clock going home. I understand from what you're saying is that you all work to make sure the job gets done.
Yes.
Okay. And is she getting the job done over there as director of personnel?
In my opinion, yes.
And improvements. Tell us about those improvements reflected in the report that you essentially took the lead on.
So, when we first started to develop the report, my focus point was to highlight change and progress. When the director came back from her leave, she was inquiring about it, and she's working with our public information officer. I originally sent out the request for all the information, got the information, and then she asked me about the previous annual reports from the department. I provided those to her, and so she began to kind of make some necessary changes that she felt was more important. She wanted to show a more collaborative approach with the Department of Personnel and the administration. I pushed back on the director with that. And it wasn't in a disrespect to the administration, but the report is solely about the work of the Department of Personnel. And so she made some changes to the report, but how we got to the finished product of it was through restructuring. She restructured the department. She moved staff around to sections within the department in which they were most knowledgeable of and or could learn. She had some staff to leave. She provided many staff opportunities to promote. A lot of the staff within the Department of Personnel were paid way less wages than many of the other department staff. She renamed many of our sections to more modern names, and she helped us get to a place where we did not need to rely on typewriters and things like that. Within the city, most people don't know that a lot of our official documents are triplicate paper. Our payroll reports are triplicate paper, and so they were things that had to be handwritten out. Even official personnel records, because of the language of the charter. We had a leadership retreat where she brought all of the HR managers and senior leaders of the department together. We did a retreat to learn about our strengths and weaknesses and how to collaboratively work together. So those are new things that we had never done. One of the things that I'm most excited or proud of is that we held our very first citywide job fair. That was had great participation turnout for that, and our numbers for hiring started to increase. We implemented a process in which we were able to track data. Prior to the director coming, we had no real data to go by. If the administration wanted to know, how many people were hired in the month of November, we would literally have to go count roster cards and see how many new roster cards are created. And so she began to implement those processes to modernize the department. We had never had an accountant in the Department of Personnel, and so she traded in one of our HR positions to get an accountant. We never had a public information officer, and so she traded in another HR position to get an accountant. That meant that we were less two HR professionals, positions that we needed to strengthen our administrative team. And so that was something new.
Okay, let's go maybe a couple more minutes. Okay. And so you, because you've seen the before, having served in personnel in City Hall or in downtown, and seeing the new version of where things are going today in personnel, do you consider those significant improvements over the, what we call it, antiquated systems of the past?
Yes.
I mean, and when I say, arcane system before, I'm not castigating the prior system, but you've seen these advancements in the department, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Under her, leadership,
Yes, sir.
all right? And do you see then this department headed in the right direction?
I can say without a shadow of a doubt, no hesitation, and 100 times, we're headed in the right direction.
Okay, in 2.5 years.
Yes, sir.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Let's talk about the vehicle use policy. When is the first time you became aware of the vehicle use policy?
The first time I actually laid eyes on it was after the situation around July the 3rd, and the director had informed me that she inquired of the comptroller's office a copy of the vehicle use policy.
So prior to that time, had you seen a copy?
Had I actually seen a copy myself? No.
And throughout your entire tenure there at the city, you had never seen a copy of that policy?
No.
How would one go about finding that policy?
That I don't know.
The full basis, okay. If you had known the full basis and you were aware that it was a violation of policy, would you have done it?
No.
Right, okay. And she didn't make you take her to Jeff City.
She didn't make me, but she did ask.
She asked, right? Right, she said, can you take me to Jeff City, right?
That's what the text
Right,
says.
it didn't say, I'm your boss, you better take me to Jeff City. That didn't happen, right?
Correct.
All right, and she didn't bribe you to take her to Jeff City with a job opportunity for a round trip, 200-mile trip to Jeff City. Isn't that right?
No.
All right. Do you know if the director was, all right, and then at some point, she blew the whistle by going to the mayor's office to relay what you had described to her, is that right?
I would not necessarily say it was a blowing the whistle kind of thing, because I didn't feel like it was something that was being hidden or anything like that.
Right.
But I will acknowledge that I learned after the fact that based upon a situation between her and the director, that the outcome of that led to her going to the mayor's office.
going to the mayor's office, which started this whole process, and that's why we're here today, right?
I believe so.
Okay. Now, whole charge was being handled. Did you have concerns about that process based upon your involvement?
Yes.
Tell me about those, tell us about those concerns.
As I stated before, my question, I had concerns about, or I had concerns regarding if there is investigation going on, and to what extent I was involved with the investigation and the avenue of the investigation. Through the ordinance of the City of St. Louis, we have a few different options in terms of how investigations are done. And so, as it relates to the process, I was asking for clarity so that I knew my involvement.
Okay. And what about the procedures that were employed through this process? You have any concerns about those?
Do I have any concerns?
Did you
about
have
it?
any concerns about any of those procedures?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
I wasn't sure if the investigation was being conducted through the, or as prescribed through the whistleblower ordinance, or if it was a independent, or not independent, but a general investigation.
Okay, and I believe you testified earlier, you've been involved in a number of grievance issues, et cetera, and this is the first time you've seen the chief of staff, deputy chief of staff, this actively involved in that. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And what I'm gonna ask you is, I know you had talked about some text messages might be missing from yours. Do you see any in here that do not appear on Exhibit A?
Yes.
Okay, isolate those for us.
So, I acknowledge the text message in which, after the time, when I asked her what time we want to leave, she said 10:10. And then she says, I'm going to get a rental car. And she says, it's not completely city business. And I said, it's fine. And she says, call me, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, so this rental business, she expressed a willingness to rent a car to take this trip. Is that right?
Yes. She says, maybe I'll get a rental car and then,
No, let's go what she says. She says, I'm going to get a rental car. It's not completely city business, and you said that's fine. And when she didn't disclose to you the personal reason why she was going to Jeff City on the way up. Is that a fair statement?
yes, sir.
All right. And you talked about the return trip and some frustration and tears and all like that kind of stuff. Was that totally different than her demeanor going up?
Yes.
Okay. And what do you mean by that?
Going up, going to Jefferson City, there was conference calls, there were emails, communication with staff. There were moments where she was on the phone, I was on the phone. There were moments where she talked to some of our deputies. There were moments where we both talked to one of the deputy directors as well.
So you're conducting city business on the way up
Yes, sir.
with staff. Tell us more about that. You said conference calls, meetings. Tell us more about that.
I don't necessarily know all the details of it, but I can acknowledge that we did talk to multiple staff.
Multiple staff taking care of city business, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And then I believe you testified that offline and outside of these calls, you and she were discussing other staffing-related issues.
Yes, sir.
All right. And that was city business, is that right?
Yes, sir.
All right. And when you got there, did you see her go to the car and retrieve anything from the vehicle in Jeff City?
No,
Okay. You saying it didn't happen, or you saying you don't recall?
I don't recall that.
All right, it could have happened, you just don't recall as you sit here today.
Yeah, I don't recall that.
All right. And so then we get into the situation we talked about where everything changed emotionally, correct?
Yes,
She was frustrated, I think is one of your terms, right?
yes,
There were tears involved, correct?
yes.
In the personnel department, is from a standpoint of staffing, morale, is one of the things that the city tries to promote is, you know, something along the lines of family values? Is that something you all try to work with in the city at all?
I will tell you that since she has been the director of personnel, she has fostered an environment that support the staff and our unique situations. I am a single parent of 2 children and have full custody of my children, and she has been very supportive of my needs when I sometimes have to step away to go take care of things with that, not just exclusively for me because of our working relationship, but also for other staff members. And so I believe it's safe to say that, yes, she has fostered that environment.
Okay, and in this case, let's just put it in context. This was a family crisis from what you perceived when the emotion and things of that sort came about. Isn't that a fair statement?
Yeah,
It affected you because you care about your director and knowing this very personal situation from what you observed on the outside was transpiring,
yes, sir.
all right? And you were sensitive to that, being not only someone who worked with the director, but as a human being, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. And when you got back to the house and she couldn't get in, she needed to get her keys, were you looking at your watch and wondering, you know, should I take her with this city vehicle to her daughter's house when she's dealing with all of this? Was that something that was popping in your mind? I'm off the clock now, let's park the vehicle. I mean, was that something you were thinking about at that time, witnessing this very emotional, very sensitive personal situation?
I believe the director would say that I've never, since I've been in personnel under her leadership, have been a person to watch the clock and run out the door. In that moment, it wasn't about...
It's very argumentative. Do you know if somebody like Mr. Jared Boyd would have just left her there on the sidewalk in that emotional state with no keys in front of her house?
I will say this with acknowledging that he's in the room. I've seen Mr. Boyd outside of his city capacity. I know that he is a family man. I've seen him with his spouse and his family and his in-law. I do not believe that a gentleman of his stature would have left any woman, regardless if he knew her or not, in such a state of a crisis like that.
Because that's the humane thing that any man, as you indicated, would do in that circumstance,
Yes.
right? And you talked about the fact that going up, everything was fine, and then something changed, whatever that was,
Yes.
all right? And at the end of the day, you don't know what happened between Director Jenkins Gray and her husband during that encounter, other than what you observed.
I did not observe anything really between them.
Right. Do you know if he was there to meet with his ex-wife to sign legal papers associated with their child?
I learned about that after the fact.
Well, tell me what you learned about that after the fact.
Some time had gone by and the director and I had conversation, and it came about that that's what transpired.
And tell us, the record, the commission, and anybody else who reads this transcript or watching the video, what you all discussed in that regard.
She said that she had learned that there was some personal documents that were being addressed, or the reason why he was there, and not what potentially she originally thought as to why he was there.
The thought being that maybe they were rekindling their relationship.
Yes.
All right. And come to find out, from what you understood, they were there dealing with a legal matter associated with their family, correct?
That's what I was told.
That's what you were told by the director.
Yes.
And as you sit here today, do you know anything to the contrary?
Say that again?
As you sit here today, you don't know anything to the contrary, that that was in fact the reason?
No, sir. I never pried. I never, went any further.
Okay, did you ever talk to the Reverend about that issue? Reverend Gray?
Once it came up, but I didn't really, feed into it. I didn't inquire of it.
Okay, well, how did it come up and what was said by whom?
I don't remember exactly how it came up, but he did mention, because sometimes he'll pick her up from work or things like that, and we often would leave out the building at the same time. And he mentioned that, she overreacts sometimes. She's very emotional, and her instinct she just does what she feels in the moment sometimes. And that the assumption that he was there cheating was not correct. He did voluntarily, without me asking, say that he was there signing some documents pertaining to his ex-wife, and then what I learned was a child. So.
Okay. So he was there taking care of some family matters with his former wife, is what you understood from these discussions with the director and Reverend Gray. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And did you have any problems with the notice in terms of how it was framed up? I mean, the first 2 pages of the document.
I did.
Well, what problems?
So this is not the first draft of this. I had concerns because I believe that the charter states that the charge and or statement must be included with public hearing notice of such.
Okay, and does that appear on the face page of Respondents Exhibit 1? The charges.
No, sir.
Did you express that concern to anyone?
I did. I expressed it to the deputy city councilor.
Okay. Anyone else?
I also expressed it to the Civil Service Commission once we had our commission meeting, and they voted to set the date for the public hearing for the director. And in that meeting, they directed me to prepare the notification for the public hearing. And as I began to prepare the notice for the publication of the public hearing, I went back to the charter to make sure that I had all of the elements of the things that I needed to do it. And when I realized I didn't, I communicated to the commission, And so there was another meeting set, and that meeting, I prepared the agenda outlining the things that I needed clarity on pertaining to the notice.
What you need clarity on?
So I needed clarity to understand if and or how the commission received communication from the administration of said charges, and or if the pre-termination notice that's addressed to the director is what the commission was accepting as their notification. I did not have an opinion one way or the other if they were or not, but I needed it to be on record that they either was going to accept this letter that's signed by the chief of staff, or if we were going to ask for clarity or request a specific document addressed to the Civil Service Commission. And I'll just use it as an example to say, after investigation or mediating circumstances learned, the administration is forwarding to the Civil Service Commission a request for public hearing based upon this statement. We believe it rises to this level, which then will prompt the commission based upon the charter to proceed with the public hearing.
And is that the normal process?
We've never had to do this, so.
Well, I mean, normal in the sense of notification of charges with respect to discipline that's going to ultimately land with the commission.
The best way that I can answer that question is to say that I did not feel comfortable with making an arbitrary decision, and so that's why it was put on the agenda for the next meeting for it to come up with the commission so that they as a body could vote and agree upon it, and whatever they agreed upon, which was what I was going to do.
But you said you didn't feel comfortable. Why didn't you feel comfortable?
I wasn't able to prepare the notice because I did not know what the charge was at the time. I did not know what the statement was. I did not know those were important things that needed to be expressed in order to prepare the notice.
Okay, now this letter is dated August 23rd, 2024. By that date, had you been interviewed by Jared and Sarah?
Say that again.
August 23rd, 2024, had you been interviewed by Jared and Sarah?
As I acknowledged in previous testimony, I was interviewed on August 19th.
August 19th. Do you know if the director had been interviewed by that time?
She had expressed to me that she had been.
Oh, okay. Next sentence says, this letter is to advise you that a pre-termination review and public hearing pursuant to Article 18, Section 9 of the city charter has been scheduled for you on September 3rd, 2024 at 10 a.m. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
Had a hearing been scheduled for September 3rd, 2024 at 10 a.m. when this letter was sent?
To my knowledge, no, sir.
All right. And had that happened to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, no.
Okay, and do you know why Mr. Boyd would send a communication to my client saying we've scheduled a meeting that hadn't been scheduled? Do you know why they would do that?
I can't answer that.
Okay, but it's in terms of scheduling this September 3rd, 2024 meeting, it would be you or somebody on your staff.
Yes, sir.
And to your knowledge, that didn't happen.
No, sir.
And you don't know why as you sit here today, correct?
I do not.
And you don't know why Mr. Boyd said it happened when it didn't happen. Is that correct?
I don't know that.
All right. And without getting into names and things of that sort, what were the nature of those complaints directed against the director? generally speaking?
One of the complaints was about one person alleged malfeasance pertaining to hiring practices of personnel employees, specifically as it relates to positions and salaries. There was another complaint alleging disparity between women and men within the Department of Personnel. There's another complaint that came in alleging being a target of the Director of Personnel.
Okay. And do you know if Jared and Sarah were involved in investigating that one?
To my knowledge, no.
Oh, okay. You know why not?
I can't answer that.
All right. How is that particular charge resolved? What processes?
The commission took the matters up. The commission established a process. What that process consisted of was they asked me to reach out to the law department to get a legal opinion if the complaints rise to the level of, or does the complaints fit the parameters of a whistleblower complaint or general complaint.
A whistleblower complaint, why is it important to figure out if it's a whistleblower complaint?
Because the process for a whistleblower complaint is very specific in terms of how that works and to which body is to handle such investigations and what that consists of.
How are whistleblower complaints to be handled?
There are 3 entities in which whistleblower complaints are to be handled through the Comptroller's Office, through the Civilian Oversight Board, and to the Department of Personnel. And because the issues pertain to the Department of Personnel or the Director of Personnel, it then would fall to the Comptroller's Office or the Civilian Oversight Board to handle such investigations as prescribed in the whistleblower ordinance.
But whistleblower has a special
Yes, sir.
denomination, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And that's because there's an ordinance that says this is how you handle those types of complaints, right?
Yes, sir.
And you're bound by the ordinance just like the rest of the city's bound by that ordinance because it's passed by the Board of Aldermen, correct?
Also irrelevant.
Subject to that, I mean, we're talking process, right? The process for whistleblowers is a separate process that's governed by ordinance as you understand it in your capacity in handling these types of matters, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, and that governs the city in terms of how those matters should be handled is your understanding based upon your experience in personnel-related matters. Is that right? Other 4 situations handled by this procedure that you said was outlined under the existing evidentiary rules were handled in the same manner by the same commission, even though it involved allegations against the Director of Personnel, right?
Yes, sir.
But then we get this situation that involved a round trip to Jefferson City, and all of a sudden, we got the Chief of Staff, we got the Deputy Chief of Staff, we got a different procedure, right?
Yes, sir.
And so those rules talk about appeals and all that sort of stuff, right?
Yes, sir.
Right, and those were designed to handle the appeals that the commission deals with on a regular basis, right?
Yes, sir.
And so now we have a situation that didn't fit, right?
Yes.
So somebody suggested, well, let's just change the rules and make them fit, right?
Yes.
Okay. And they didn't do it in the first 4 situations, right?
Correct.
Didn't have to change the rules, they just worked with what they had, right?
Yes, sir.
But for this situation, this particular situation, for whatever reason, we need special rules that fit, is what happened here, right?
Yes.
Did you have any input in these rules?
No, sir.
They didn't ask for your input.
No, sir.
Any of your staff have any input in these rules?
No, sir.
But these didn't emanate from the Department of Personnel, right?
Correct.
Where did they emanate from?
I don't know.
They just appeared, as far as you know.
they were provided to us in email.
From whom?
The first process change I received an email from the chair of the commission,
Who's that?
Steve Borney.
Okay, so, okay, so you got something from the Commissioner Chair Barney. You don't know where he got them from.
He stated to me in that correspondence that he had conversation with a deputy city councilor, and the evidentiary hearing process proposal changes came from that. So
From a conversation between the chair and the city councilor's office.
yes, sir.
All right. So did that lead you to believe that they somehow created some rules? Is that your understanding?
Not created, but changed.
Changed, I'm
Yes.
sorry. Changed it to fit this situation.
Yes, sir.
And have you been made aware of communications, either written or oral, between the mayor or any of the mayor's staffs and any commissioners regarding the Sonia Jenkins Gray matter?
Would you state that again?
Let me read that one back. Give you a break.
The question was, have you been made aware of communications, either written or oral, between the mayor or any of the mayor's staff and any commissioners regarding the Sonia Jenkins Gray matter?
Yes.
Tell us about those.
In my day-to-day work with the commission, the previous chair did state that he was in.
And let me just so that our record is clear, when you say the previous chair, maybe if you can give the name so we can have those in the record.
The previous chair, Dean Dibo,
Okay.
he did acknowledge that he was in communication with the administration pertaining to the matters, and that he wanted to make sure that the process was fair and transparent. We didn't have a whole lot of conversation about it, but he did acknowledge it.
Was he,
No,
what did he
he was.
express in an angry tone to you? Issues associated with communication with the mayor's office as it relates to Director Jenkins Gray?
I would not say in an angry tone, but he definitely expressed clarity about wanting to do it the right way.
And why did he want to express that? What was there something suggesting that it wouldn't be done the right way?
I can't answer that.
Okay. What was your understanding of these communications between the commissioner, the chair of the commission, and the mayor's office?
I didn't really draw any of my own conclusions about it.
Okay. Do you know how many of those communications there were?
No, sir.
Okay. When did this discussion take place wherein the chair told you about these communications with folks in the mayor's office?
I believe that I may have an email when I inquired of some clarity pertaining to scheduling the hearing and things, and that may have been one of the responses that I got.
And what did that response say?
Basically that he had been in communication with the mayor's office. He did not go in details about every thing or how many times or anything like that. But
Okay. But in the email that's somewhere over there in the city, it says from the chair that he's had communications with the mayor's office regarding Director Jenkins Gray and the matter.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Without providing any detail.
Yes, sir.
Well, strange meaning the fact that the commissioner, chair of the commission is communicating with the mayor on charges that the mayor is bringing against the director of personnel. You didn't think that was strange?
Not exclusively, no.
Was that commonplace?
In my capacity, I had learned that some of the decisions that the commission was having conversations in closed session were being shared outside, and so there had to be some kind of conversation, but I did not necessarily find it different because they had to be communicating with somebody since they weren't communicating with the staff.
Do you know anything about efforts on the part of the mayor's office to change reemployment rights as it relates to certain individuals?
I'm going to object as irrelevant.
Subject to that.
I'm aware of the intent of changing the reemployment rights process.
By whom?
I can't speculate as to by whom.
Well, tell me what you know about the effort to change the reemployment process.
I had a conversation with the chair to add that to one of the agenda items of an upcoming meeting. I don't recall the exact date it was. I did add it to the agenda. I also directed my staff to prepare copies of the text in the civil service rules as well as the charter, anywhere that stated or included anything associated with reemployment rights. And so we provided that as context for the commissioners.
What are reemployment rights when you talk about that? When you use that term, what do you mean?
The civil service rule and the charter speaks of reemployment rights, two separate instances. There is reemployment rights when someone has separated from city service in good standing and want to come back within a period of time in which they'll come back and they'll be restored to their same position and the same salary. There's also reemployment rights from a layoff. When obviously a person has been laid off and then they come back and there is no gap in their employment record.
Okay. And this meeting, does that meeting happen on a discussion of the changes to the, what would this be, the civil service rules regarding reemployment?
The Civil Service Commission discussed it. There was maybe two civil service, no, it was on the agenda for 3 separate commission meetings. One of those meetings, the item was omitted by the acting chair at the moment, or during that time. The other instances was basically them communicating or acknowledging the plan to revisit the reemployment rights process and or making changes to it.
Right, so where did it come from? Did it just pop up again out of nowhere, this whole notion of changing the reemployment rights process? How did that happen?
I did have a conversation with the director about it.
Okay.
And
Which director? Let's get clear on that.
Director Gray.
Okay.
And she explained to me that there was a plan of changing the reemployment rights to potentially prevent the previous director of personnel from getting on the reemployment list.
Okay. And did Sheena Hamilton reach out to you in an effort to interview you regarding the facts involving the Sonia Jenkins Gray dispute?
She did.
Okay. How did she communicate to you?
Through email.
And what did she say?
First,
I'm not asking them what they discussed. I'm just trying to get the fact that on the record here, the city councilor, Sheena Hamilton, reached out to you to interview you associated with this incident, right?
she reached out to me, and I did not respond back to her.
Okay.
We end up having a conversation about another matter.
Okay, and I don't want to get into the conversation. I want to cut you off because he's going to say it's attorney-client privilege, so I don't want to get into
We
that.
end up having a conversation about another matter, and at the conclusion of that, she mentioned about meeting with me pertaining to, meeting with me to ask some questions.
And do you know why she would be involved in an investigation into this situation?
I don't know.
Involved in an investigation into the situation.
No.
Okay. Is that common? Does the city council get involved in conducting investigations?
I don't have an answer for that.
Meaning you don't know, or you aren't aware of a situation where that's occurred?
I don't know.
You don't know whether it's occurred, or you don't know whether or not they've been involved in the situation?
I don't know whether it's occurred.
Okay. But under your involvement, and you've been handled dozens of these things, have they been involved in the actual investigation? Outside of advising and weighing in on legal issues?
They are the legal advisory for the entire city, but in terms of in-depth investigations, I don't have an answer for that.
So you've never seen that?
No.
Okay. This will be a first, another first, right?
Yes.
There are a lot of things out there involving the city on various websites in that system, isn't that right?
We do not have a hub where all policies are housed in one place. Different departments, and I've been fortunate enough to work in multiple departments, policies or procedures are, some are just in books, some are on website, those that they find relevant on their section website, but there is no one-stop shop to find all policies or procedures with the city of St. Louis.
So would it be fair to say that's a cumbersome process to try to isolate a particular policy in that maze of websites where policies might be maintained?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. And then you went in a closed session, and then chairman, even though he resigned, he was in the closed session of that meeting, correct?
Yes, sir.
You remember that?
Yes, sir.
Did that surprise you?
It did.
Why?
So that morning, he sent an email to the commissioners and myself stating that he was resigning as chair of the commission.
Immediately? Was it effective?
Immediately,
Effective
yes.
immediately, okay.
When I got that email, I called him and I needed to get clarity if he was resigning as chair or if he was resigning from the commission.
Okay.
I also need to clarify a previous statement pertaining to the statement I made about communication between the chair and the mayor's office. He had said to me that he had communicated with the mayor's office. They was aware of his resignation. He didn't really go into full detail about all of it, but he made clear to me that he was resigning from the commission as a whole.
And that was in the morning before the meeting?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that's why you wanted to talk to him, to make sure you understood?
Yes, and in that conversation is when he actually acknowledged that he had been in communication with the mayor's office. So I wanted to make sure that I clarified the record on that.
Okay. And before that, had he indicated, well, you talked about an email where he said he had communications with the mayor's office, right?
Correct, and I did try to check that a moment ago, and I would have to go through everyone. I did kind of skim through that a second ago. I didn't find it, but I am able to 100% confirm that in my conversation with him on the morning in which his resignation email came, he did inform me that he was in communication with the mayor's office and they was aware.
Okay. Got it, got it. And as you sit here today, you don't know of what was discussed in any of these conversations between the chair and the mayor's office?
I don't. After I had that conversation with him and he confirmed that he was resigning from the commission, the very next call that I made was to the director. And I informed her that we got the email. I informed her that I talked to the former chair, and he confirmed that he wasn't just stepping down as chair, but he was stepping down from the commission as a whole.
Effective immediately?
Effective immediately.
And then when he popped up in the closed session, you thought that was a little bit strange?
He actually sent a message saying, asking for the log information for the meeting, which we sent out to them anyway, and he had a lot of technical issues before, so there were many meetings that he weren't able to take part in. He did get the login information, which is the public information. It's nothing separate from the commissioners and the public. But I was shocked when he did show up in the closed session.
And he actually presided over that session?
The acting chair, which is the vice chair, turned it over to the chair, and he presided over the closed session.
Turn it over to the former chair since he had resigned that morning?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And he essentially controlled the meeting?
Yes, sir.
Even though he had resigned earlier?
Yes, sir.
And even though he told you he was resigned, he was done?
And that he had communicated that to the administration. Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you recall any discussions with any other commission members about the matters associated with Director Jenkins Gray?
After former Chair Dean Perry Dibo resigned and Vice Chair Borney was acting chair until he was voted as chair, the commission had met and set the date for the public hearing for the Director of Personnel. I believe they set the date for January 30th or 31st, something like that. That is also the same meeting where they voted for me to go ahead and prepare the public hearing notice.
For the 30th and 31st of January?
Yes, sir.
Okay, which meeting was that?
I don't know the exact date off the top of my
December
head.
16th, does that ring a bell? That was a Monday meeting, which is uncommon, right?
I can't give you an exact date.
Okay, but you remember in one of the meetings there was a discussion about having this public hearing on December 16th. You recall that?
On December the 16th, there was a meeting on December the 16th, but the date that they had agreed upon was like January 30th or 31st.
At that December 16th meeting?
I believe so, I just can't confirm it right
Well,
now.
there was an emergency meeting set for 2 days later, right?
Yes, sir.
You remember that, right?
Yes, sir.
And this is after they told you, okay, we're gonna have January 30th and 31st, prepare the the notice for that hearing date, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. And then what happened at this emergency meeting? 2 days later.
So, I got correspondence from one of the commissioners, Vincent Fluellen, asking me to prepare an agenda for another meeting. And I
The
said,
emergency meeting.
yes. I said, okay. I asked for some agenda items because the commissioners, they have never in the past kind of like set the agenda. That's something me and my staff do outside of like if they want to change a rule or something like that. So he forwarded me or sent me an email with an agenda, and it was pertaining to the matters pertaining to directed personnel. Going into that meeting, I did not necessarily know all the details of, you know, what was going on, except for we use a very generic language on the open session of the meeting when we go in closed session pertaining to personnel matters. I did prepare that. It's posted out there. It's on the city's website, as with all of our public open agenda meeting items. They had the meeting, and
Well, hold on a second. You said you prepared that. You took what he provided and put it in the form
Yes,
that
sir.
served as the agenda. So you didn't prepare that agenda.
he provided me the action item of discussion, and then
And you plugged it in.
Yes, sir.
You saying that was different because normally you all would prepare that.
Yes, sir.
All right. So this is another one of these unique situations that was different than how you would normally handle everything else, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. And so then what happened next? I'm sorry to cut you off.
We got I told him that I couldn't make any promises that we could get that out there that quick because how we post things on the website, it's done in conjunction with the IT department in their web section, and they have like a 3-day rule in order to get things posted, so I had to call and beg of their mercy to disregard their process and to get this posted so that we would be in compliance with Missouri Sunshine Law and stuff like that. The meeting agenda.
How would you get in compliance? What was the compliance requirements?
Because it had to be posted 24 hours before the meeting.
Okay.
And we were like at a crunch to like minutes in order to be in compliance of it.
Do you know why it was so urgent to meet the day after we just met?
I don't.
Do you know what prompted the need to have this emergency meeting?
I don't.
Was that unusual in your experience in dealing with the commission?
This experience has been unusual, so.
Okay, and that falls within the category of unusualness, is that right?
Yes, because they had just agreed to a date, and I was, in the process of preparing the documents and stuff for the public hearing.
And then we got an emergency meeting, we gotta get with IT, we gotta get this thing posted, and then we have this emergency meeting on the Wednesday after the Monday meeting, right?
Yes, sir.
And what happened at that meeting?
Commissioner, who's vice chair now, Fluellen, proposed to change the date from January 30th and 31st, supposedly, back to the original date that they had agreed upon, which is January 6th and or 7th if needed.
And you know why that happened?
I don't have a definite answer as to why it happened.
Or you have an indefinite answer about why that happened?
I was not a part of any outside conversations, and so I don't know. I just know that it was strange or different. Within 24 hours, the dates had changed.
So the only ones who know that is the commissioners as to why, what prompted this emergency session, emergency change, and essentially moving the hearing up to January the 6th.
Yes, that
We'd
would
have
be
to
it.
talk to them to figure that out.
Yes.
Okay. To do with anyone from the mayor's staff reaching out to them, suggesting that we needed to have it sooner?
I can't confirm or deny that because I wasn't part of any conversations.
So you don't know one way or the other?
No.
And we'd have to talk to the mayor's staff in order to figure that out,
Yes, sir.
or the commission, right?
Commission had just met and had agreed upon the date. We had not publicized the date. Nobody knew about the date besides my staff and the commission staff and the commissioners. And so how the date got out, so quick, I don't know. Again, I wasn't part of any conversation, so.
Okay, let me unpack that a little bit more. 30th and the 31st, or the 6th? Which date are you talking about got out?
The 30th and 31st day.
And how do you know it got out?
Our department, as in Department of Personnel, some staff made mention of it.
Do you know if that was discussed in the meeting where they set the 30th and the 31st?
It was discussed in closed session, and there was nobody in the closed session besides the commissioners, my staff, and myself.
Observed where there were discussions about the charges against the director and the dates being contemplated.
The acting chair during the opening of one of the commission meetings, I don't know the exact date, he did completely disregard the agenda, and on the closed agenda for that date was the matters pertaining to the director of personnel. That was the agenda in which they were going to vote and address things that were of concern pertaining to the public hearing notice. But he started the meeting off talking about the director of personnel public hearing. And I believe it was the same date in which former Chair Dean Perry Dibo resigned.
Okay, did that shock you?
I was completely shocked.
Why?
That's not our custom. That's not norm. Matters that's in the closed agenda session are not discussed in open agenda. I believe you was on the meeting and you heard me in a respectful way try to get back to the printed text that we had published, because I did not want to find ourselves in a situation where we were in violation of something, so.
Okay, were you rebuffed?
Yes.
Okay. You know why you were rebuffed?
No.
Are you aware of certain statutes that prohibit discussions about confidential personnel matters in an open session?
We post those statutes on the website and the agenda. That's what allows us to go into closed session. So yes, I am aware of statutes.
Commissioner violated that statute when he started talking about these charges against the director of personnel.
I'm not a legal expert, but I will say that when I did try to redirect the meeting back to the agenda, he stated that it wasn't a secret and it was already out there for the public, so.
Was it already out there? Being discussed in any public meeting before that, to your knowledge?
What I would say is the Civil Service Commission office had not officially released or publicized the date pertaining to the public hearing of the Director of Personnel.
In fact, there was no notice of any public hearing at that point, was there?
No.
Had you received any charges at that point?
That was something that was on the closed agenda session to get clarity about, as I mentioned before, the document, the letter that Jared has signed. The commission needed to decide if they were going to accept that as the form of charges to them in which they were going to proceed with the public hearing or not.
And they decided to go with that.
Yes, sir.
That, and beyond Article 18, Section 9, are you aware of any other procedures that would apply to that circumstance?
No.
All right. And is there anything in that article, as you understand it, that allows for the use of a hearing officer?
No.
Know that there's nothing in the article that provides for that?
To my understanding,
You've read it before, right?
multiple times.
All right, and you don't see anything in there about a hearing officer, right?
No.
And in fact, it says that the hearing shall be conducted by the commission, right?
Yes.
All right. Do you know why Commissioner Barney would talk about this matter involving Director Gray in the public meeting like that before any public hearing was set, outside of the context of a public hearing? Do you know why that would have happened?
I don't know.
And you tried to sort of time out, you know, this is not proper protocol. That's what you were trying to do in that meeting, right?
Yes.
But when you say you were rebuffed, meaning he ignored what you said, and he said, well, it's already out there, so what, right?
Yes.
And what was your impression of that?
I was completely baffled.
Let's turn to who were you intermediarying with as it related to the charges related to Director Jenkins Gray? Not the content, I just want to know the people.
I really had no involvement during that time with the law department because the communication was directly with the commissioners. It wasn't until later on that I got involved with it.
Okay, so let's talk about when you got involved. Who were you intermediarying with?
I had reached out to the city councilor
When
and
we're saying Sheena Hamilton?
yes,
Okay,
and there were some questions that the commission wanted me to ask of her.
okay.
I did, and she had advised me that she was going to assign Deputy City Councilor Michael Garvin to assist.
Okay, and before that, were you aware of her assigning that to Michael Garvin before that announcement she made to you?
No.
All right, and so,
There wasn't much conversation that I had with them. Any and every time that I've interacted with the law department, it's customary for me to communicate directly to the city councilor.
The city councilor,
And then
right.
she in turn, which 99.999% of the time has always been the person to respond back to me. This was the first instance where somebody else was delegated to do that.
okay, all right. And then you talked about her reaching out, trying to interview you, and that didn't happen. So she never told you what personal reason to this day as to why she was going to Jeff City, or has she?
Would you state that again, please?
To this day, has she ever told you why she was going to Jeff City on the front end?
On the front end?
Meaning, she was going there, her car was there, we know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And her husband was there, we know that.
Yes.
And you don't know if she went in her car and retrieved papers from the car, right? You don't recall that as you sit here today.
Correct.
That it?
I believe so. Is that it? Yes, sir.
All right, so that concludes the presentation of the deposition excerpts. So what's next?
We would call Bianca Lambert.
All right,
We gotta go get her.
sure,
Could we take a quick restroom
sure.
break?
Well, yes, all right. It's 12:27, so just make it 5 minutes.
Yes, sir.
And then we're going to break at 1. We are recording now, back on the record after a short break. Mr. Harris calls his next witness, Bianca Lambert. Clerk will swear her in. Ms. Lambert, raise your right hand, face the clerk.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, you may proceed.
All right, good morning.
Morning.
Could you go ahead and state your name for the record?
My name is Bianca Lambert.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you to make sure you speak up into the mic so that the commissioners can hear you. Who's your employer?
You can move the microphone over so it's right in front of you.
My employer is the City of St. Louis, Department of Personnel.
What's your position?
I'm an HRIS and Records Retention Manager.
Okay. And just really briefly, generally, what are your duties and responsibilities? What does that entail?
So it's payroll, compensation, records, and system configurations.
Okay. You're appearing here today pursuant to a subpoena, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And you understand at the hearing, this is about, a trip that the director, Sonia Jenkins Gray, took to Jefferson City in July of 2024.
Yes.
I want to ask you some questions about that. Did you learn about that trip from Anthony Byrd?
Yes, I did.
He's a coworker of yours?
Yes.
Okay. And did Mr. Byrd tell you why he was telling you this information about the trip?
Because he was torn on what to do.
He was torn on what to do about the trip that had occurred?
Yep.
Okay. And do you recall around the time that that Anthony Byrd contacted you to tell you about this trip?
So, yes and no. No. I didn't know the context of the conversation before I had the conversation. So,
Okay.
I became aware of the topic through having the conversation, not in advance.
Okay. Take a look. There's a folder up there in front of you that has documents in it. And hopefully there's one that says Exhibit 20.
Yes.
So this is appointing authorities Exhibit 20.
All right.
You see that?
Yes, I do.
What is Exhibit 20?
It is a chat conversation between Anthony and myself.
Okay. And so you recognize that, right?
Yes.
And is that, it looks like it's dated July the 11th?
Yes.
So is that around the time that Mr. Byrd contacted you to tell you this information about this trip?
Yes. I would say I think the conversation ended at 3:40 p.m.-ish, and I knew the full contents by 6 or 7 o'clock that night.
Okay. I would just move for the admission to evidence of Exhibit 20.
No objection.
No objection. Exhibit 20 is admitted.
And so again, that's July 11th. Did you end up telling the director what Anthony Byrd told you?
Yes, but not until at least a month later.
Okay. All right. So what I want to do is I want to direct your attention then. And you said a month later. I want to direct your attention to a meeting that you had with the director on Thursday, August the 15th, 2024. Okay.
Okay.
First off, tell us how is it that you came to meet with the director that day?
So I had seen or interacted with the director several times that day, but the actual conversation about what Anthony had told me didn't occur until later on in the day.
Okay. And what brought you to that meeting?
So I had received a text message from John Understall, who's my immediate supervisor. He was aware that I had gone home, and he had told me that Director Gray wanted to talk about the transition because, everybody, the mayor's office and Director Gray had talked. And so I said that, yes, but I didn't want it to be a verbal conversation and that I would come back into the office to meet with the both of them.
Okay. And so is that what you did?
Yes.
All right. And as you said, this was later in the afternoon.
Yeah, so it would have been like after 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. that day.
Okay. Did Mr. Unnerstall attend that meeting with you?
Yes.
And where did you meet?
So I went directly to Unnerstall's office, and then we both left and went to Director Gray's office.
Okay. Was anyone else in the meeting amongst the three of you?
No, just the three of us.
Okay. Okay, so I want to get to then what happened in that meeting. You said it's in the director's office?
Yes.
In this building?
Next door.
Okay.
Across this wall.
All right. In the meeting, as you've already alluded to, you told the director what Anthony Byrd told you, right?
Yes.
And before we get into the details of what you specifically told her in the meeting, after you have the meeting with her, did the director state that what you told her in this meeting was true?
Yes.
Okay. So now I want to get on to what you ended up telling the director in this meeting. What did you tell her?
Oh, so when the director had first walked in, the conversation was intended to be about my transition. How exactly we were going to work out me leaving the Department of Personnel and going to a different department, which I think at that time was planned to be ITSA. So I had interrupted her first off, very quickly into the meeting, and told her that I had given a version of events to the mayor's office and to IT, but I had not given them an accurate explanation of why I was needing to leave the Department of Personnel, and that I felt it was important for her to know, and I think I actually referred to it as the last selfless thing I could do for her before I left. So I explained to her that Anthony had asked to talk to me about how him and the director were having a text conversation where Director Gray had stated that she needed an unmarked city vehicle, and Anthony is showing me his cell phone while he's explaining this to me and telling me that him and Director Gray took this vehicle. They go to Jefferson City basically to hunt down Director Gray's husband, Reverend Gray, and confront him because he was apparently with an ex-wife or just not doing something that he was supposed to. So Anthony goes to the building, and Reverend Gray had walked outside of the building.
Let me object, because this all calls for hearsay.
Well, okay, well, it's in the form of a narrative, so can you break it down into some questions here?
Sure.
What's been said so far wasn't the hearsay that was said, right? You were objecting to what was coming next,
Well,
right?
she was saying.
She was starting to say what was said, but.
Right, by
So,
Dr. Byrd.
Right. Okay. So you're telling Director Gray that you're describing what Dr. Byrd told you, right?
Yes.
And you reached the point where Byrd and the director are in Jefferson City.
Yes.
And they've gone to this building.
Yes.
And the director's husband comes out of the building.
Yes. Director Gray had walked away. There never really was an explanation of where she went by
Well, let me
Anthony,
object.
but
It's all hearsay from what she got from Dr. Byrd.
Just like last time when Mr. Unnerstall testified, it's not offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted. The witness has already testified that Director Gray admitted to these things that the witness is telling the commission were told to her. And so
I
these are.
I don't think that the previous testimony was clear enough to establish what exactly she was claiming the director admitted to.
Well, but that's where. So
She said that
we're about to
something
hear
was
that.
true, but it wasn't clear what she was talking about.
And so we're about to hear what it was she admitted to. And in fact, she's testifying to the things that she said in this meeting with the director, where the director admits that it's true.
She is
All right.
testifying on hearsay statements that she got purportedly from Dr. Byrd, who we've already heard from, that she is now relating as fact.
She's not relating. It's not offered for the truth of the matter asserted. Again,
Okay, the objection's overruled. It's not being offered at this point to prove the truth of the matter asserted. Simply, she's telling us, as I understand the question, what she told the director.
Correct.
Is that right?
That's correct.
Who's at this meeting with her and Mr. Understall.
That's correct.
So that objection is overruled with the understanding that when the statement of what she told the director includes what the witness had been told by someone else, that statement is not being offered as if it's proving that that statement is true.
Correct.
All right, go ahead.
All right. So, and you mentioned that you told the director that the information you had from Dr. Byrd was that while they're there at the building in Jefferson City, that the director gets out of the car and her husband comes out of the building.
Yes.
Okay, and then what else did you tell her?
So those two make eye contact. Reverend Gray recognizes Anthony and asks if the director is there. And Anthony wasn't very clear on how exactly Director Gray came back involved, but from that point there was yelling. Director Gray was back with a recording device of some kind, but so there was a brief confrontation between Reverend Gray and Director Gray. The two parties separated. Anthony with Director Gray and Reverend, I don't know. There's no further point or reference to him in what I was told. So Anthony then proceeds to tell me how they are listening to audio recordings of Reverend Gray and another person, in that Anthony believed later on, I'm sorry, so they separate. Reverend Gray, I don't know where he goes in this narrative. Director Gray and Anthony Byrd are with each other in the car driving. Anthony explained to me that after this altercation, he is taking Director Gray home to pack her things, and then from there, they went to Director Gray's, one of her children's home, and there were bits and pieces there. But in the conversation that I had with Director Gray, when the point of the narrative came to talk about her children, I did not relate any information. It was actually stated that I didn't feel comfortable, especially with John being present, to make much mention of her kids. So that is the point in the conversation where I had stopped talking and Director Gray said, well, that's true, that happened. And she explained that she not only had asked Anthony if it was okay for her and him to go on this trip, but that she fully believed he was the responsible party and he was the one that should be held accountable for the trip that they had went on.
So in the conversation, so back to the actual meeting where you, Mr. Understall, and the director are in the director's office, she tells you that that Mr. Byrd is the one who said that it was okay to take this car.
Yes.
Okay. And how did that strike you?
It terrified me. It scared me a lot. Because to me, that's a weird lapse in judgment for someone who is at the highest placement to think that if a subordinate does something inappropriate and they are active participants in it, that it then becomes the subordinate's fault. It's always been my understanding that when it comes to management, there's a certain burden of responsibility on those in the higher tiers than those that are technically below.
And did you relay, did you also state to the director other information that Mr. Byrd told you about whether this has happened before?
Yeah, so after Director Gray had been like, well, it's true, but Anthony knew we were going for non-work reasons, so I don't see how this is my fault. She had called Anthony and put him on speakerphone while we were there. And after she got off the phone with him on speakerphone, there was a good solid 10 to 15 minutes of us discussing the viewpoint, meaning whenever she said that it was Anthony's fault, I tried to explain to her that, that's the exact argument that Anthony is going to pose, is that it's her responsibility, she's the superior, and that in most business or corporate settings, that's generally how the responsibility falls. It falls upwards, not downwards.
And you said that while you're there in this meeting, the director calls Anthony?
Yeah. So it was very abrupt. So it was like as soon as she said, yeah, that's all true, Anthony knew that, though, he was a willing participant in this, and he said it was okay for us to do. She called him on speakerphone while John and I were still in the room, and And she tells us to be quiet while she asks him very odd questions for the social situation that we were in.
Questions like what?
Do you know how much I love you? Do you know how important you are to me? Do you know how close you are to me in the city? You're the closest person to me in the city. It was very weird considering everything that I had just told her for her to then call him on speakerphone and do that.
And did you have any discussion with the director regarding whether or not this kind of behavior had occurred in her prior employment?
Yeah, so when we were talking about Anthony and...
Again, this is triple hearsay now.
No, this is a conversation that the witness had with the director.
But she is relaying purported hearsay from Dr. Berg, and we're back in the same situation.
Right. And all of this is not being offered for the truth of it, right?
Right.
Because we have no way of knowing whether this is true or not, right?
What is being
Well,
offered for?
what's being offered, right, it's not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted, but it's being offered to understand what the director said in response. So we're getting the director's actual statement.
Well, then we
through
should
this
focus on the
through this
statement
witness.
and not some hearsay statement of somebody else.
I mean, this is exactly what we've been doing.
Well, when the witness says a series of things and then says the director said that's true, how do we know which of the series of things that refers to? Does it refer to all of them or only to the last thing that was mentioned? Yeah, you're trying to offer it as a way of, in effect, a statement, an admission against interest, I guess, by the director, right? That's what your reason for offering this is, right?
I mean, that is what we've offered it for when Mr. Understall testified. That's what we've been offering it for while this witness has been testifying, and that hasn't changed.
All right, so the hearsay objection is overruled. However, try to get your questions confined so that it's concise, not a narrative of a long list of things, right?
Okay, so do you remember what we were talking about?
Yeah, so when we were talking with the director about kind of Anthony's counter argument and what Anthony had expressed to me about it, I had pointed out that Anthony claimed that she had done this twice before, and that she had been fired twice before, and she said, and immediately followed up with, yes, that happened, but that doesn't have anything to do with this. And that is not information I knew prior to Anthony.
Okay. So you told us about how, you're there and she calls Anthony Byrd on speakerphone, asks him those questions. And then what happens at the end of the meeting? How do you guys leave there?
So at the end of the meeting, Anthony appeared at her office, so we had to go out this back door, and then we were standing here for a little bit, and then we went out into the hallway because we had to wait for Anthony to come through to be out of the hallway. Then we were out there, and then the director had actually gone to the front of the suite to collect our keys and phones and handed them to us in the hallway, and then we separated from there.
So did you receive a call from the director later that evening?
Yes. Later that night we talked, and it was more of a temperature check than anything else. The conversation we had was at one point I asked her if she wanted to, because now we were alone and John was no longer present, if she wanted me to relay the things in the part of the narrative that had been given to me by Anthony that involved her children, and she asserted that no, we didn't need to hash that out. She had lived it, she was there, she doesn't need me to relay it back to her. She knows that I got it from Anthony, and Anthony was also present.
Did you receive a call from the director the next day, which was Friday?
Yes, I did.
And what happened in that call?
It was very long. It was, I think, at least an hour, but The conversation was mostly, what does she do now? So now that this information is known and it's a problem and she's aware that it was not an appropriate thing to do, what can she do about it now? So we discussed going to the comptroller's office to reimburse for whatever the cost was for the car, and the director had stated that she had a meeting with the comptroller coming up in the following week, so she would do it then. And I asserted to the director that she did not need to give context to the comptroller, that it could be just as simple as I borrowed the car and I accidentally did errands instead, how do I pay you back? We talked about her quitting and that she wasn't going to continue to work for the city anymore, and me advising her that I think that is probably the best call.
Why did you tell her that?
Because she has a tendency to have these weirdly close, almost unprofessional dynamics with people that become explosive. I only know that for certain with Anthony, but I've been vaguely concerned about it with other people in the past.
This conversation that you're talking about on the next day, Friday morning, did she contact you on your personal phone?
Yes.
And where was she?
She was at her house,
Okay.
getting ready for work.
And was there anything in particular? You said it was a long conversation.
Yeah.
And so it was in the morning.
Yes.
She was getting ready for work. Was there anything unusual about what she was doing while you're talking to her?
Not to me at the time.
Well, in retrospect?
So yeah, at one point in the conversation, she did put the phone on speakerphone so that she could continue to talk to me while she showered and got ready.
How many times did the director call you or talk to you regarding this whole issue after this August 15 meeting that you had with her?
So between us meeting and my reporting, I think we talked specifically 3 times to my recollection, but in passing probably more.
Okay. In any of those conversations, did she ever say that anything that you had told her in that meeting was not true?
Yes.
What was
And so Anthony had asserted in the narrative that his reallocation was given to him as like a surprise thank you for everything that had happened. And she has always maintained very aggressively that his reallocation, which happened the following day, had nothing to do with the events of prior. And in that morning conversation, we talked about that at length. If they truly are separate issues, then she should not do anything to Anthony. There's something we could do about the comptroller and the use of the car, which was one of the accusations of if this is proper or improper. And then the second one would be if Anthony's allocation was proper or improper. One of those things we could do something about. Anthony, I was of the opinion that should not be touched.
Okay. But other than that, there was nothing else she said was not true about what you told her?
Yes, so there's one other part. So in the beginning of Anthony's narrative that he had relayed to me, that I had relayed to the director, Anthony had stated, when we were talking, he physically pulled out his cell phone and was showing me the text messages mentioning unmarked car and tinted windows and things like that to support his claim. In one of the conversations I had with the director later before I reported, she specifically started to contest that point. She and I kind of discussed how he had shown me the conversation as it was already going, not the beginning of the conversation, where the director claims in her beginning portion of the conversation, she says this isn't work-related, and Anthony says it's perfectly fine, which was not text message that I had seen or was aware of until she had pointed that out.
Okay. Did you report what you had learned, these events, to the mayor's office?
Yes, I did.
I want to talk about how you came about doing that. Tell us what led you to reporting this to the mayor's office.
So the reason I reported to the mayor's office was because I was told that was the correct place to report. The reason why that I've personally felt compelled is that this is one of the oddest, most unprofessional situations I've ever found myself in, and I don't believe that it was appropriate or in the city's best interest for that information to stay with me. I'm a custodian. I record. My job is just to keep the facts and keep the documents in order. It doesn't involve a lot of subjectivity, meaning, is it okay that she did that? Is it okay that Anthony did that? Those things are outside of my wheelhouse. So knowing that all of this information was really scary and knowing how much it changed my professional opinion of Director Gray and Anthony someone else needed to weigh in on this.
And so, how did you end up going to the mayor? Did you talk with anyone before you did that?
That Monday morning, because over the weekend, before the weekend had occurred, I had explained to the director that I really needed to stop talking about this topic. I wanted nothing to do with it, and I needed the weekend to settle all the information from what Anthony had told me to what she was now telling me and what that meant. And so Monday, before I went into the office, as I am driving to work, I had reached out to John. I had texted him and told him that I intended to report and that I didn't know who to or how, and that I really needed to talk to Kathleen Tanner, who is a lawyer within the Department of Personnel, so I would be able to get a legal answer or some sort of legal guidance and also be able to keep it internal without... I wanted to talk to as few people as physically possible, so Tanner to me was the only right person to pose the question to. Understall, who already knew, to me was not the right person to advise me of where to report. So I reached out to Tanner. Tanner told me that the mayor's office is their reporting hierarchy, like technically that's who the director's boss is, which I thought was weird because it's not a common thing that I hear from internal to the DOP people. And so I went to my office, and then we had reached out to Sarah Baker because I had asked John to go because I realized going to Sarah Baker by myself seemed a little odd, but John, having been there to witness all of these admissions, would hopefully help Sarah Baker understand that I'm not gossiping, like I'm not pulling this out of a hat. I'm here because the director admitted it.
So you go and or you contact Sarah Baker and meet with her that day?
Yes.
August the 19th?
Yes.
Okay, and you along with Mr. Underslaw?
Yes, he came with me.
And was it just the three of you in that meeting?
Yes.
When you have the meeting, do you relay what Anthony Byrd told you?
I mean, when I related to Sarah Baker, I relayed it from the conversation of the director Gray. So I didn't lead heavily with the Anthony and the preceding month that I knew about the information beforehand. So.
But you told her about your meeting with the director?
Yes.
Okay. And what was said in that meeting?
Yes.
Okay. And were you asked to write a statement regarding, what you knew and what you learned?
Yes.
Okay. There should be an Exhibit 7 there. You see that?
Yes.
And this is Appointing Authority Exhibit 7.
Well, I'm going to object, so let's not put it on the screen until we have a ruling, please. Thank you.
The objection is?
It's, this particular exhibit is latent hearsay statements purportedly about discussions she had with Dr. Byrd.
All right, what's the relevance of this statement, since the witness is on the witness stand?
I mean, I was offering
You're trying to offer it as what?
Offering it as, it's a statement that she was asked to write. She wrote the statement, and it sets forth, the information that she provided to the mayor's office pursuant to that request.
All right. So again, you're not offering it for the truth of the matters asserted in the statement. You're just offering it to show what, I assume you're going to lay a foundation that this is a statement that was provided to the mayor's office?
Yes.
All right. For that purpose, it'll be allowed, not for the truth of anything in it.
Okay.
All right.
So you recognize Exhibit 7?
Yes.
And can you tell us what Exhibit 7 is?
It's my summary account that I gave to Sarah Baker a few days after I reported.
So I would move for the admission of Exhibit 7.
All right, it's admitted with the limitation that the objection was hearsay. The limitation was it's not being offered for the truth of the matters asserted therein. It's just simply to show this is the document that this witness provided to the mayor's office as her statement. Pardon me? I mean, there is some overlap between what she's already testified to and what's in this, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Some, and there's a lot more hearsay detail
Right.
in this statement.
Right.
So we
We'll just have to consider it with that limitation placed on it, and we'll just have to figure it out. All right.
Okay, because I think I'm running short on time here.
I'll tell you what, why don't we stop now, since it's about time for a lunch break anyway.
All right.
And you're getting into this statement. Now also, I think you started with this witness at about 12, a little after, was it?
$12:40.
We took a 5-minute break, and then we came back and he told the witness.
By our count, we got about 6 minutes.
I'm sorry. Apologize for not, okay, yes, after the 5-minute break, I have 12:36. So 12:36, and then we went for about 10 minutes to 12:46, wasn't it, when we took the bathroom break, or not? Or was it right at, was it 12:36? We've gone on since then. Okay, so 12:36 to 1:06 is half an hour.
Yeah, okay. That's pretty close, yeah.
All right, so you got 5 minutes left.
Okay.
Okay,
You still want to do the lunch break now, or?
yes, we'll go ahead and do the lunch break now. Back on the record after lunch, it's 20 minutes after 2, and the city is ready to resume with the witness, is that right?
Yes.
All right, and from what we talked, you have 10 minutes left, is that right?
I thought it was 5.
Was it 5? All right.
I'll take 10, though.
It take 10. Well, 5 minutes. I think you're right that it was 5, wasn't it? Yes. Okay, 5 minutes left. Go ahead.
All right, Ms. Lambert, I want to ask you about, we were talking about the fact that you reported these matters on August the 19th to the mayor's office, right? Mm-hmm. Did you also have a meeting later on, after reporting this, have a meeting with the director?
Yes. After I reported, I got a call from Director Gray asking me to meet her outside.
Okay, and did you do that?
Yes, I did.
And where did you meet?
We met out front, in front of Carnahan Courthouse.
Okay, and what did you do when you went out there?
Greeted her. We had a brief conversation where she had started the conversation off stating that that Sarah knew. And so I took that as a window of opportunity to tell her what I had done that morning. So I told her that I had reported the events from our prior meetings to the mayor's office a few hours beforehand.
Okay, so you told her you reported to the mayor's office?
Yes.
Okay.
She was frantic, and I didn't want her to have to wonder. Like, that was an unnecessary type of anxiety to give her. And the fact that she had asked to meet outside led me to believe that she thought someone other than me had reported. So I wanted to quell that as quickly as possible.
Okay, so where outside did you talk?
In front of Carnahan.
Okay, and did you go anywhere else?
Yeah, so we paced around the building a few times before we ended the conversation in front of Chris's.
Okay, and as you paced around the building, were you continuing to talk about the fact that you reported?
Yeah, so the focal point of that conversation was my reporting, why did I feel like I needed to report, and Director Gray wanting to kind of clarify if I thought she had done something maliciously, like if I was reporting because I thought that she should be fired, or kind of what my motives were for why I reported.
Did she indicate to you that she thought this was a fireable offense?
I mean, it's never specifically been addressed, but we have talked about it in the past, because I had kind of advocated that I didn't believe that this was fireable. Like, first time somebody makes a mistake, that happens, the severity kind of determines. You accidentally spend $50, that's one thing. You accidentally misspend $50,000, that's a whole different thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so what else did you talk about as you're walking around?
I mean, it was a very circular conversation. It was a lot of asking me the same things over again, if I was mad at her, if I felt that she had done it on purpose to harm the city, and what my viewpoint was. And during the conversation, part of the reason why I engaged in it so long was that she seemed very uncomfortable and out of sorts. So I was trying to give her as much conversation as she needed to kind of to settle.
Okay, and you mentioned that you all ended up out in front of Chris's.
Yeah.
Is that a local restaurant?
Yes.
Downtown here?
Yeah. So we had paced around Carnahan because we weren't standing in one spot. We were walking while we were talking. And I'm following her. I don't think there was ever a conversation of let's go to Chris's. So we're start walking towards Chris's. She makes a phone call. And while she's on the phone with this person, we sit down at the blue benches. And she gets off the phone. She's much calmer after being off the phone because she turns to me and she goes, "Are you uncomfortable? Is this us talking out here making you uncomfortable?" And I was like, "No, like I'm pretty vocal. Like if I'm uncomfortable, I'm going to make sure that you know that. Like I'm not going to do anything." And then she asked if I was willing to have a conversation with her husband about why I reported, and she gestured to the car that had pulled up. And I said no, and we separated.
So a car had pulled up while you were at Chris's?
Yes.
And she gestured to that car indicating that her husband was in the car?
I assumed from the, would you be willing to talk with me and my husband about this, that the car didn't self-drive and park there, like he was in it. But it's tinted, so you can't see inside.
And you told her no?
Yeah.
Why did you say no?
I just didn't think that there was any reason for me to be alone with Director Gray or Reverend Gray after I reported, and there have been accusations or gossip about Reverend Gray.
Well, I don't even want to get into that.
Okay.
So you told her no, you just didn't think that would be appropriate?
Yep.
Okay, that's all I have.
All right. Right on time.
I finished it before you could tell me to stop.
That's exactly right. Okay, Mr. Norwood, 2:25, you may start.
Wait a minute. Let me.
Go ahead, get your stuff, get your stuff.
Why you do that?
Okay, we can start.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Ms. Lambert. How long have you worked with the city?
Since September of 2017.
September 2017. And how would you describe your relationship with Dr. Anthony Byrd?
Co-workers.
Co-workers. Did you and he ever get together after hours?
Yes. There was a period since 2017 when I worked with the city where I would have considered Anthony friends. There was a group of us, Ashley McLean and Anthony Byrd and I were close friends. But this is almost 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay, so you're saying you were close friends and co-workers, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you were where, does Anthony own a car?
I don't know.
Have you ever seen him drive a car that he identified as his car?
Not in the last 5 years.
Okay, not in the last 5 years, but he's been driving around, right?
Yes.
And you've driven around with him, right?
I've been incredibly intoxicated and needed a designated driver in the last 5 years, and yes, I was in a car with Anthony.
And that was a city vehicle?
I don't know.
Well, he didn't own a car over the last 5 years, right?
I don't know if he did.
Okay, so you don't know if he owned a vehicle?
No, I don't know if he owns a vehicle.
And you were close friends with his, and you never saw him identify a vehicle as being owned by Dr. Byrd?
I would never ask him that question.
Well, how many vehicles have you been in, different vehicles you've been in with Dr. Byrd?
I don't know.
More than 5?
I wouldn't know if they were all his.
I know, I'm just saying, let's just get the number down. How many different vehicles have you been in with Dr. Byrd?
I don't know. You're asking for a time period that's more than 5 years ago. So I don't know 5+ years ago how many vehicles he had.
Okay, do you recall being in a vehicle with him when he was intoxicated?
I know that I was intoxicated.
Object to the relevance.
Stand.
Do you recall being in a city vehicle with Dr. Byrd when he was intoxicated?
I
I think
can't.
that objection was sustained.
Well, sustained, but different question, but sustained also.
With respect.
Irrelevant.
Well,
What's
it's
it-
relevant to the extent that if she was in a city vehicle that she was aware of and didn't report it, then that's highly relevant.
I was so drunk I took home other people's property because I couldn't tell the difference between my personal cell phone and my personal keys and the keys of other people. So
First of all,
I can't.
witness shouldn't start answering when the question has been asked and there's been an objection. We're talking about it, so there's no time frame whatsoever on this to begin with. We
Well,
have
she
no
said
idea whether we're
within the
talking.
last 5 years, have you been in a vehicle with Dr. Anthony Byrd, a city vehicle where he was intoxicated?
Well,
And again, that's a relevant objection.
well, all right, and some of it has already been asked. So the objection as irrelevant is sustained. I'm sorry.
Are you aware of Anthony, Dr. Byrd, checking out city vehicles and driving them for personal use?
I don't know him personally to know that.
I'm sorry?
I don't know him personally anymore to know that.
Well, you just said you were close friends with him.
Over 5 years ago, I've associated outside of work maybe one time with Anthony in the last 5 years. So you're talking about a period that's 5+ years ago.
Why did you stop being close friends with Anthony?
I believe Anthony has an issue with honesty, and for me, that's difficult to be friends with someone who isn't honest.
Okay, well, in fact, in your statement, you report the fact that, in your view, and I'm going to use your words, you said Dr. Byrd is a notorious liar.
Yes.
Okay, what do you mean by that when you said Dr. Byrd is a notorious liar?
I don't know many people who haven't caught Anthony lying about something in the professional workplace.
What do you mean by that? Explain to us. We
Just-
want to know about the notorious lies that you've attributed to Dr. Byrd.
So it's more of a mentality than a tally list. So I came to have an opinion about Anthony Byrd that I developed 5+ years ago.
Okay.
So it's no different than it was now. But again, 5 years ago, I don't remember specifically. He and I had a reporting relationship at one point, and it became very contentious because I viewed him as lying about things, and Brian, who was also supervising the both of us in this dynamic, was kind of the same opinion. So he's been a difficult person to supervise because of the dishonesty. And then as a peer, meaning as a coworker, not someone that reports to me, I find Anthony to be an easy person to work with.
And a notorious liar. You didn't say he was a liar. You said he's a notorious liar. And that's what I'm trying to unpack. When you say notorious liar, what do you mean by that? What does he do?
It's
What did he
innocent.
do to lead you to believe that he's a notorious liar?
5 years
I'm
ago,
gonna
I don't.
Object. It's asked and answered. At this point, it's irrelevant.
Sustained, it's asked and answered. Notorious liar.
Well, I'm trying to understand why, in her view, he's a notorious liar. His credibility is at issue along with hers.
I mean, I object again. If you're asking about the basis or like instances, that's improper cross-examination. It's irrelevant. Again, it's been asked and
Is
answered.
counsel saying that a witness who is testified under oath, who she's identified as a notorious liar, that the nature of his notorious lying isn't relevant in a case like this?
You can't get into specific instances. I mean, as an evidentiary matter, I mean, you know this. You can't.
Fair enough. I will move forward. You also had indicated in your statement that you believed Dr. Byrd was trying to manipulate you when he was relaying to you information regarding this trip to Jeff City, right?
Yes.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
So it is weird to me that if you are in a situation where you believe that you were in a situation where you, whether by management or by your own action, have done something improper and you're concerned about getting in trouble, you don't tell your coworker. You tell upper management or you follow some sort of chain of command, but Anthony chose not to do that. He chose to talk to me about it. And so from my perspective, the only reason he would talk to me about it is to manipulate me.
Okay. And you lied to the director about the reason why you thought about quitting? Isn't that right?
No, I was always honest with the director. The first opportunity I had from the decision of calling the mayor's office and saying that I'm quitting to the end of the situation, she heard that secondhand. I wasn't the one who told her those reasons. My conversations with the director from the start were always, this is the real reason why I'm quitting.
Well, but you lied to Jared and Sarah, though, about that.
I've never spoken to Jared about this matter.
Okay, well, let's look at, do you have in front of you, I believe it is the investigative report. Which binder do you have there?
I'm not sure.
I think that is ours. Could you turn to number 28? And you see, for the record, Exhibit 28 appears to be an investigative summary, and it reflects a meeting on 8/19/2024 at 10 a.m. with you, Mr. Understall, and Sarah Baker.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
All right, and in that, it says, in that next to last bullet point, it says, Bianca communicated to Sarah Baker on 8/15 at 9:41 via chat, heads up, I'm quitting. At that time, Bianca said that it was because she was overworked, right? That's what you told Sarah, right?
Yes,
And that was not true, was it?
it was true.
Well,
I
it
was
goes
short-staffed and overworked. Yes, that is true.
Well, but it says in here, it was only partially true, right?
Yes, it does say that.
All right. Instead, she wanted to leave because of issues with Anthony, right?
I guess you could say that.
I guess that's what you said. That's what you communicated to him, right?
I mean, isn't this someone else writing down what they said that I
Okay,
said?
fair enough. Now let's go to what you wrote. Okay, let's pull out
Okay.
your statement. Can we do that?
Is there a number?
It is in that binder, number Respondents Exhibit 33. It's actually in that folder, I believe it's marked the Appointing Authority Exhibit number 7.
Okay.
Okay, and that's your statement, correct?
Yes.
And nowhere in the statement do you have any suggestion that during a conference call that Director Jenkins Gray said she loved Anthony. You didn't include that in the statement, did you?
I do believe that I used other words,
But
but
you didn't include it in the statement, right?
no, love is a weird word.
Okay, well, it's weird when you're testifying under oath, but it's not weird when you're reporting what you suggest were the events involving my client. Is that right?
So when I'm asked to write a factual statement or to write a statement, I've always been taught to avoid emotions. When you have a conversation, emotions can have a part because when we communicate and it's an emotion-based, if there's any miscommunications, we're navigating through that via conversation. But when I'm writing a statement down, that
Okay.
doesn't really have an opportunity.
Okay, but this statement is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages long, right?
Yep.
Okay. And in the third paragraph, you say, Anthony presented me with all of this information to me under the guise of a torn individual, right?
Yes.
So you didn't believe Anthony because you knew he was a notorious liar, right?
I wasn't sure that enough of the information that Anthony said that I would be able to tell the difference between the truth and the lie. Anthony commonly has truths in his lies. Good lies have some sort of truth in them.
Okay.
So
So he's a truthful liar.
I don't think that's what I just said.
Object to asked and answered, and it's also getting argumentative.
I'm
Objection
cross-examining.
that's argumentative.
It's cross-examination,
Sustained
Your
that the
Honor.
objection-
I mean, I can't cross-examine a witness.
You can cross-examine the witness,
Okay.
yes, but
All right.
not argumentatively.
Well, he was a notorious liar in your view, and you didn't trust him, right? Mm-hmm. And you made that clear in your statement, right?
Yes.
And in fact, it appeared that he deleted some of the text messages that you and he had exchanged together, right?
Potentially.
Potentially. Well, let's look at the last paragraph or next to last paragraph on the first page. You say, however, when I went to capture my screen conversation where he had asked to meet with me outside specifically, it is now nowhere to be found in our chat log, right?
I thought maybe I was misremembering where we had the communication, so I've also checked my personal and work cell phone. So I was looking for this method of communication in multiple places.
Right, but you go further and you say, you have figured out that apparently he has a way to delete on his end messages
No,
sent to
I
you.
said that I was not going to spend too much more time because the statement was timed, meaning I was asked to prepare the statement and to provide it. So I wasn't going to spend a bunch of time trying to assert if Anthony deleted something or not. I don't know if he did. I don't believe in my statement that I said that he actually did and that I could prove it. I just said in an effort to support this part of what my statement is, these are the steps that I took to try to resolve, and this is where I decided that it wasn't worth the time.
And one of the things you decided or determined based on your report is that apparently Google Chat allows a one-way deletion of conversations, right?
Yeah, so I Googled the phrase, can you delete Google Chats, and that is what it stated.
Okay, fair enough. Now, let's skip down to it's marked AA00024. You see that page?
Yes.
Okay. And then you go into discussions that you and Mr. Understall had regarding Anthony, right?
A discussion.
A discussion. And what you say, quote, we discussed Anthony being a notorious liar and how I felt he was trying to manipulate me and intentionally poison my opinion of the director. That's what you wrote, right?
Yes.
And that's what you believed, right?
Yes.
All right. And then you go further and say after this conversation occurred, there were little incidents here and there that caused me to become concerned that Anthony was telling the truth and lying about other parts of his story. I have known Anthony for years, and I know him to be an untrustworthy human being.
Yes.
That's what you wrote, right?
Yes.
All right? And in fact, you noted in here the fact that there was some intimation that perhaps his promotion was related to the trip to Jefferson City, but then he told you some information that contradicted that you recorded in this statement, correct?
I don't know the definition of intimation.
Okay, let me rephrase it. You, in your statement, stated that at one point in his story, he told you that he believed that the promotion or the increase in status was a bribe of some sort, right?
Yes, he stated that the reallocation was based on the events that had happened the day before because he received the reallocation the day after.
Right, and then on page 24, that next to last paragraph, you say, I didn't realize at the time, but I realize now that the entire conversation with Anthony directly contradicts what Anthony had told me several times about how the reallocation came about, right? Mm-hmm. Is that a yes?
I'm trying to find where in this statement you're talking
Okay,
about.
it's in the fourth paragraph, or actually the paragraph from the second from the bottom. You see that sentence, I didn't realize at the time?
Yes.
Okay, and so you realize that he was lying about his belief regarding whether or not the promotion was related to the trip, correct?
I don't know what lie I got out of this. I didn't get a lie out of this other than Anthony had asserted that he had not talked to the director about the reallocation before it occurred.
Right, and it turned out in another conversation.
Once it hit his paycheck, and he argues after the fact that the dollar amount is incorrect, I took that to mean that part of his statement was impossible because if he and the director never talked about the reallocation, how did he have a different number than the director did?
So it was a lie, right?
It was disingenuous.
Okay, all right, disingenuous, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then if we go to the next page, it's AA000025. you identify another incident where you say, quote, during this conversation, Anthony brought up practically gloating about his influence over the Civil Service Commission
Yes.
and how damaging Director Gray's appointment had been for civil service. So he was gloating to you about his control over this commission.
Yes.
What did he say in that regard?
That they continuously kick her out of meetings and that he's the only one in the DOP who really knows what's going on anymore because she's effectively being swapped for him and that he's the one who knows where everything is now and from that perspective.
Gloating,
Yes.
bragging
And it upset me.
about being able to control this commission, correct?
Yes.
You know if that was a lie.
I know that Anthony embellishes to make himself sound more important than he is. And if he says that he's a king, then he's somewhere at the midpoint.
Okay, maybe a knight.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you go further in this next paragraph. It says, is it important to note that he was drunk during this call, so he may not have a clear recollection of what occurred? See that?
Yeah, because it's not.
How do you know he was drunk?
It's not normal for him to call me. And it's not normal for us to have conversations like that. And again, going back to why I viewed Anthony told me all of this to manipulate me, the continuing to bring it up as if this was a topic that he and I should be talking about, and just the way that he was bringing it up was frustrating for me. So I considered him to be drunk because he normally doesn't call me that late at night. He normally doesn't embellish and try to self-fluff, if that makes sense, if you know what I mean by that, like try to make himself sound more important. Like for him to call me after work to talk about this and then to talk about how upset and damaging Director Gray is, like all of it seemed so contradictory to how he'd been behaving leading up and the kind of dynamic that we currently had that I assumed he was not sober.
Well, you didn't say I assumed he was not sober. You said he was drunk.
Yeah, I believe he was drunk.
Right, and you knew him. You knew he was a drinker, right?
I mean, I know that he drinks, but he has a weird, like, drawl. And most people do when they've been drinking, so I picked up on a drawl and took it to mean he was drunk. And I also took his flippant behavior and the statements that he was saying that he was under the influence, which is the reason why he was being so cavalier about the topic.
And then you talked about the fact that you were having these panic attacks. Tell us about these panic attacks.
I had a panic attack in the office.
Tell us about the panic attacks.
So I had a panic attack on the particular day where I had called the mayor's office and told them that I was quitting, and on the day that I had told Director Gray that everything that had occurred in the conversation between Anthony and I. And this is why at that point in that day, when John Understall and Director Gray had asked me to meet, I was not physically in the office. I had gone home.
Well, but the panic attack, one of the panic attacks you described as happening on 8/15/2024, right?
That's the day that I'm thinking of, yes.
Okay, and that was before you went and blew the whistle to the mayor, right?
Correct.
All right, so tell us about that panic attack. What was that about?
You keep referencing multiples.
So you only had the one panic attack on 8/15?
So the day that I told the Director Gray about what occurred, yes.
Okay, and you had a panic attack, and when you say you had a panic attack, what do you mean by that? What happened?
So I didn't know it was a panic attack at the time. I figured it out afterwards after I had calmed down, but I had started hyperventilating, and I was having a really hard time catching my breath, and it felt like someone was sitting on my chest. So not only could I not catch my breath, I couldn't get enough air to really talk to someone normally, and I think the most I managed in the 2 hours of that panic attack was yelling at one point.
Okay, and let's go to the last paragraph on page 25. You say, when I met with the director, I asked to start first, and that I needed to because I had lied to Sarah Baker and Cindy Reardon about the reasons I was going to quit, right?
Yes.
That's what you wrote, right?
That's what I believed at the time, yes.
Well, you believe you lied because you knew you lied, right?
No, I believed I lied because I believed it was a lie at the time. To tell Sarah Baker in that phone call on that day what Anthony had told me would have been incorrect. I would have been basing it off of gossip. I would have just been spreading misinformation about the director that would have done nothing but hurt her
Well, let me
and the
cut you
department
off. I'm
on my
gonna
way
cut you
out.
off because you're being non-responsive. I'm talking about the statement you wrote here. You say, when I met with the director, I asked to start first, and that I needed to because I had lied to Sarah Baker and Cindy Reardon about the reason I was going to quit, right?
Yes,
And that's
because
kind of how we started off. You lied to them about the reasons you were quitting, right?
it's not an entire lie if I only give partial. So
It's a lie because you said you lied, right? Did you lie when you wrote this down and said you lied?
Well, I had to tell Sarah Baker that the main reason why I actually quit on this day was because of the information I ended up telling her days later, but I didn't know it was the truth at the time. So from my perspective, I was trying not to spread misinformation. And I didn't want to be in a situation where I was like, sorry, mayor's office, I'm quitting because of this information about the director that I'm not going to tell you about, but it exists. Goodbye.
But here you say you lied about the reasons you were quitting.
I lied about the explanation I was giving to them.
So you lied.
Yes, I overemphasized being overworked in order to shield this gossip portion of this dynamic.
But the reason you were going to quit is because of your relationship with Anthony.
No.
That's not what you say here?
I don't say anywhere in here that I'm quitting because of Anthony in my statement. I said I'm quitting because of the cultural environment that the director has allowed to happen. What Anthony did and there being an environment that allows Anthony to do that are two different problems.
Okay. And so you lied.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
Asked and answered.
Whatever
Asked and answered is sustained.
Okay. Now, in here, next page, you talk about a good portion of your brain froze up. Tell us about that. How does that happen? How does your brain freeze up?
I stopped listening.
Okay, and how often do you have brain freeze?
Something that happens often enough for me to know that it's going to occur.
Okay, and when you have this brain freeze, you say you tune things out, you don't really hear what's being said?
Yeah, I'm thinking about something so hard in my head, whether that be doing math or numbers or whatever it is that I'm trying to sort through, that, yeah, I kind of tune out what I'm hearing because it interrupts the internal thoughts that I'm trying to go through.
Okay, and then when you go try to recall this stuff that you may have heard, but you had brain freeze and you didn't hear, what do you do to compensate for that?
I don't. And what I mean by that is, so there's really not much in my statement after the brain freeze portion, specifically because I know that the director and John were talking, but I don't state in my statement what they said because I don't remember.
Okay, so sometimes the brain freeze affects your memory, right?
Is it memory if I don't hear it?
Well, good question, and I'll leave it at that. And then somewhere in here, the next paragraph on that page 26, you say, I'm acutely aware of how my brain will check out, right?
Yeah.
So what happens when your brain checks out?
Fight or flight. I thought it was better to quit on the spot and never come back to the city and not tell anybody what I knew. And it took everything in my body in that meeting not to do that.
But how often, when did this brain checking out business start for you?
I don't know what you mean.
Well-
I think everybody has differences with attention span, meaning that there's a reason at school you don't just get lectured for 10 hours straight. You eventually stop listening, and you're describing it like some sort of medical episode.
Well, I know I'm not describing all. I'm asking you a question. This is what you wrote. You said, I am acutely aware of how my brain will check out. I'm trying to understand and have this tribunal understand what you meant when you said your brain checks out.
I did not walk into that room with the intent of asking the director if any of that was true. I never did, and I didn't expect to come out of that room with her stating that it happened or any portion of it. My plan was just to information dump, tell her everything, and then follow through the transition plan and leave. So when she said unsolicited that, yes, it was true,
What was true? What did she say was true?
that they had taken the trip,
Okay,
that the text message exchange happened,
okay.
and from her perspective, that she had asked Anthony beforehand if it was okay for them to do this.
And
And
let me
then,
pause you right there. Do you know if she asked him beforehand if it was okay?
not in the same way that I know the text messages from Anthony's perspective. So
Okay, do you know if Anthony deleted text messages from that, similar to what he may have deleted in your text messaging?
no, I don't know that. What Director Gray and I had discussed, and I believe this was the third conversation, was Anthony had shown me his phone and the text messages as support, but I never held the phone. I wasn't like going through the conversation. I just briefly skimmed it to make sure that it matched. So having relayed that to the director had called me and was talking about it and how she noticed that Anthony had intentionally started the conversation off in the middle, in that he had specifically not told me about the portion of the text that Director Gray had leading up to that portion of the conversation,
And that was
where
in-
she claimed that she had asked him that the trip wasn't entirely work-related and if that was okay, but I never physically saw those text messages in the same way that I did with Anthony. This was her verbal recollection of the differences in what Anthony had told me and I had explained to her versus the proof that she had of what actually happened.
Did she show you those text messages where she asked him whether or not it would be okay if it wasn't entirely business?
I don't specifically remember.
Okay,
I remember verbally discussing it, but I don't.
okay. But you remember not seeing that message in Anthony's text messages, correct?
Correct.
All right. So if it's there and it's in evidence, somebody deleted that part of Anthony's text message, right? Because you didn't see it.
I can't assert that, but I mean, if I hand you this piece of paper and I cover this up, did I delete this or am I covering it? So
Okay,
when you're
alright.
texting, you can start the screen from whatever portion of the text that you want to. So if you have a 10 text message exchange back and forth, you can start at the third message and it will appear no different for me as being the start of the conversation. So I can't attest if anything was deleted,
You
but,
just didn't see it because it wasn't there,
right,
for whatever reason. Correct?
correct.
6 minutes left.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Okay. Part of the reason why Director Ray was coming to you is that since you had been there for a little longer than she had, to ask for your advice as to how this should be handled, right?
No.
Okay, she asked your advice as to how it should be handled, right?
She asked me things like, who do I report this to?
Right.
And I deferred that I don't really know.
Well, let's look at page 27, right? And that first bullet point, do you see that one?
Yes,
All right, and what you said is, quote, "We agreed again," we meaning you and Director Jenkins Gray, right? Is that a yes?
yes,
"We agreed again she needed to immediately reach out to the comptrollers to reimburse the usage of the vehicle for that day."
yes,
All right? And that was something you and she discussed.
yes,
And she was telling you that that's what was her intention, to self-report and to reimburse the city, right? Well, while you're thinking about it, let's go back to your statement. She, meaning the director, right? You see that? Let's go back to your statement. That same bullet point. She, meaning the director, right? Is that a yes?
yes,
Mention she, meaning the director, right?
yes,
Had a meeting with the comptroller later next week and would resolve it there, right?
yes,
That's what she told you, right?
yes,
Based upon this discussion you and she had about her reaching out to the comptroller to self-report and to reimburse, correct?
separate conversations.
Separate conversation, but what you wrote here is what you wrote here, right?
I didn't write self-report in the bullet
Okay,
point
I'm
you're
sorry, that's
talking
my
about.
word. Let's go to your words. You then say, "I did express to the director she did not need to go into detail with the comptroller's office and to be short and sweet," right?
Yes,
And that's what you advised her.
Yes,
And why'd you advise her of that?
because in her state, I wasn't really sure the severity of how big of a deal this would be or wouldn't be.
So you were suggesting she lie about it.
No, I said, I borrowed the car for work but ended up spending most of the day doing errands. How do I reimburse you?
So that's what you suggested that she relayed to the comptroller,
Yes.
which is a lie, right?
I mean, is it?
Well, I borrowed the car. She didn't borrow the car, did she?
I don't know.
Okay, but you suggested she say, I borrowed the car for work, but ended up spending most of the day doing errands, right?
Yes, that is what I suggested she said.
All right, and do you know whether or not she spent most of the day doing errands?
No.
Do you know whether or not on the way to Jeff City, they had multiple phone calls regarding city business?
No, I don't know, other than the inflammatory narration that I got from Anthony, what occurred.
Right.
I don't know if they could have done business things or work-related stuff. I don't know the difference. The narrative that was given to me and what she had agreed was that they had gone on this trip to track down Reverend Gray and that those things had happened. Now, the timeline, meaning if the car was checked out from 8 a.m. until 10 p.m. at night, I don't know for certain, but after 5 o'clock, I don't think is work-related.
Well, but you don't know anything about what transpired on that trip because you got it all from a notorious liar named Dr. Anthony Byrd, right?
That Director Gray agreed with.
I'm sorry?
That Director Gray affirmed was the truth, yes.
Affirmed that she went on Jeff City. She's affirmed it in this courtroom. So we can check that off, right? Affirmed that they came back from Jeff City, right? Right?
Yes.
Affirmed, and you said, I believe, you testified here today that there was yelling going on. You remember saying that earlier?
I mean, yes, but you're confusing me with the days, because you start a sentence on one day and then you end the sentence on a different
I'm talking about the date in
day.
question, July the 3rd to Jefferson City.
I wasn't there to yell at anybody.
No. Let me rephrase the question. You said that what was relayed to you by Anthony is that there was yelling, right?
Yes, Reverend was upset to see them there.
And he was yelling,
Yes.
is what Anthony told you.
Yes.
And you know why Anthony would have told this tribunal via deposition that there was no yelling?
It's in my statement.
Object.
I have no further questions. I withdraw it.
Okay, the last question's withdrawn. Mr. Norwood, right on time.
Thank you.
And
I can do it. I can do it. It's possible.
that's right, there you go. And so now, Mr. Harris, as we've ruled at 20 minutes for your redirect if you need it.
Okay. Ms. Lambert, so you were asked a lot on cross-examination about lies and lying and notorious liars and all the rest, right?
Yes.
I mean, the fact is that when you learned this information from Mr. Byrd, you didn't think he was telling the truth.
No, I didn't.
And you ultimately go to the director, I think when you testified on direct, as a last selfless act.
Yes.
Because you thought she needed to know what Anthony was saying about her.
Yes.
But after that meeting, when you came out of that meeting, you realized Anthony wasn't lying.
I realized that I didn't know anymore between everything that Anthony had said and the way that Anthony had presented the situation to me and the way Director Gray had responded and the information she presented. I didn't know how to settle what parts were true and what parts weren't anymore.
Right, and Mr. Norwood referred to your written statement, and there's a sentence in your statement where you say that at the end of your account, the director admitted it was true, they had gone on this trip, and Anthony hadn't lied.
Yes.
That's when a good portion of your brain froze up, right?
Yes, because I immediately started to think about everything that Anthony had said and the implications of what that means, not just from a personal perspective of the personal relationship that clearly wasn't really work-related and how that impacts a professional workplace.
You were asked about, giving advice to the director, advising her how to handle this, whether to report it to the comptroller, what to say. Are you the director's supervisor?
No, but I think she was panicked and she very much needed somebody to talk to. And between me and John, I was the one that she picked. So I was trying to give her the best advice I could think of in the situation that she was in.
You were the one that she picked. Right?
Yeah, I mean, because she may have had conversations with John. John and I never discussed if the kinds of conversations Director Gray had with me afterwards were comparable with him.
John is deputy director.
Correct.
Personnel, right?
Correct.
He's your supervisor.
Yes,
So she reached it down 2 levels to get to you.
technically, yes.
And you were asked about, you know, in the statement you write that you had asked to start first in that meeting with the director, and that you needed to because you had lied to Sarah Baker and Cindy Reardon about the reasons you were going to quit.
Yes.
Right? Did you lie? Did you ever lie to them about what Anthony told you?
No.
Did you ever lie to them about what the director told you?
No.
Did you ever lie to them about what happened in the meeting with you, Mr. Unnerstall, and the director?
No.
You say also in your statement that, again, you say, I'll read, the potential of this is why I wanted Unnerstall to be present, because even though I did not believe it was true, meaning what Anthony had told you, I couldn't eliminate the possibility. And then you say she also, by immediately blaming Anthony, what did you mean she immediately blamed Anthony?
I mean, that's exactly what she said. She said that's true, but Anthony told me that we could. And she proceeded to expand on the conversation they had and how Anthony said that it was all right. But she didn't provide any context to what the trip was.
And you said in that same sentence that this confirmed an even worse fear that she is not likely to take responsibility for her actions.
Correct.
Why did you say that?
Because she immediately and aggressively blamed Anthony. She was saying he's the one that should be dismissed, like he's the one that should be in trouble, and to me that was scary.
Okay. You were shown and asked questions about Respondents Exhibit 28. You see that? Exhibit 28?
Yes.
Have you ever? Is that even your statement?
I've never seen this before today.
So you didn't write anything in Exhibit 28.
No.
And then you were also asked about, and I'm asking you this because I got a little confused in the testimony about the whole reallocation. So you initially thought, or let me ask you this: when Anthony Byrd revealed to you what happened with this trip, did he indicate to you that that the reallocation was tied to this trip?
Yes, he said that he had come into the office the following day after the trip, and that Director Gray had been persistently calling him to look for an envelope on his desk, and he kept saying that he was too busy and annoyed, and the events from yesterday still had a bad taste in his mouth. So he eventually opens the letter, and the letter is his reallocation to the higher position.
Okay, I guess I'm trying to understand during the testimony during cross-examination, what part of Anthony's, what he told you about this whole reallocation business, did you come to find that there was a conflict or a contradiction?
So Anthony, in the conversation on 7/11, had stated that he did not know that the reallocation was coming. He didn't know what the job was going to be. He didn't have clarity on his current job to even know what this reallocation was going to mean for him. And that he was frustrated by that, and that he had repeatedly, after the reallocation occurred, tried to have conversations with Director Gray, but Director Gray was unwilling to talk to him about it, and that, to him, was an indication that the reallocation wasn't actually tied to work, it was tied to this event.
Oh, I see. And so, but you came to believe that that part was not true.
So there's really only two pieces of Anthony's statement that Director Gray has ever stated was just flat out not true. The text messages and the reallocation, and Director Gray was very vocal leading up to it that the reallocation had nothing to do with this. It was in the works beforehand. So Anthony's insistence that it is a part of it and her insistence that it's not, I didn't know who to settle between the two of those conflicting opinions.
Okay, got it. Okay, but outside of those two things, the text, what happened in the text messages and the reason for the trip and this reallocation, she never told you anything else that Anthony told you was not true.
Correct.
You were asked on cross-examination, I think early in the cross-examination, about like this some incident of riding in a car, a city vehicle with Anthony and people being drunk.
Yes.
Does that have anything to do with these proceedings?
So they're being brought up in these proceedings because I told Director Gray about it, that I had suspicions that I was in a city vehicle and that these crazy, weird situations only seemed to happen with Anthony, because Director Gray was stating, Anthony had told me all of this to help poison my opinion of him, and that
That's what she told you?
Yes, and that he was jealous of me and he had it out for me, and I, as kind of a throwaway statement, was like, the worst thing I can think of is this. Like, I'm not really worried about him coming for me.
So she's telling you that Anthony's telling you these things to manipulate you,
Yes,
and he's coming for you, and he's jealous of you.
yes,
This is the director of personnel telling you
yes,
this about another coworker.
yes.
Did you? Oh, there are some exhibits. There should be some exhibits in the Manila folder up there. Exhibits 8 and 9. What are those exhibits?
These are time cards.
Okay, and they're time cards for who?
Director Gray and Anthony.
And do they include the time period, including July 3rd?
Yes.
Okay. And do they indicate then that they were in fact paid for that day?
Yes.
Okay. I would move for the admission to the evidence of exhibits 8 and 9.
No objection.
All right. Appointing authorities, exhibits 8 and 9 are both admitted.
Are you familiar with a reemployment letter involving a Richard Frank?
Yes.
Who is Richard Frank?
Richard Frank is the prior director of personnel.
Did you have concerns regarding the handling of that letter?
Yes.
What were your concerns?
So in my statement, you will see there is a portion where I state that Director Gray mentions having Richard Frank's reemployment letter. And I put in parentheses that I know for a fact that that's not true because I had gone to Richard Frank's file and had checked it. After reporting, Director Gray produced an over a year-old original reemployment request letter from Richard Frank and had asked me to place it in his file.
When was that?
I don't remember the specific day, but it was between, I could find out, but I don't remember the specific day right now.
Okay. But what was your concern about that?
It's a source document that was in Director Gray's office for a very, very long time. Source documents shouldn't, if the reemployment letter was going to be approved or denied, either way, that original document still needed to still needed to end up in the personnel file. Like there's still a record of it occurring, even if director chose to not allow him on the reemployment list or to allow him on the reemployment list. The record should still exist. So her having the record and the record not existing is alarming, and it's an indication of breakages that can happen in the system when you're dealing with a paper-based HR system.
I mean, how old is this letter?
It was old. I think it was like 9 or 10 months old by the time that I had it.
And how did you come to learn that it existed?
So Director Gray had asked me to come down to get it from her because she physically handed it to me.
She handed you the original?
I'll have to check. I
Okay.
don't, I remember her and I in person talking about it, but I don't remember specifically if she physically handed it to me or if it was in my office when I came in one day. People have a tendency to slide things under my door or put things on stacks in my chair. But no, I don't have a specific memory of exactly how I got it. I just remember how upset I was when I did receive it because I assumed it was going to be a copy of the original reemployment from way back in 2020 when he had originally left. But when I had the document on the back, there's a timestamp, and I realized this wasn't that document. This is a second additional document that had just been in her possession this whole time.
Okay, that's the part that confuses me a bit, and I'm probably the only one in here that's confused. But you said a second document?
Yeah, so Richard Frank applied for reemployment rights twice. I was under the impression he had only done it once, and that is the document in my statement that I had confirmed was still in the file.
Okay.
So for there to be a second letter, he had written even after the fact.
Oh, I see.
So he had originally sent one under Moten that I was aware of, and that one was denied, and that is the one that I thought she was referencing. That's the one that's in my statement. But then I later learned that there was an additional new one that he had submitted at some point in the last 2 years that she had.
Okay, so that later one that was submitted in the last 2 years, do you have that?
I do now, yes.
Okay, when did you get that one?
At some point in the last month.
Okay, so at some point in January?
January or December. I have it written down. I could check. I really don't remember, which is why I write it down, because
Okay.
I'm not good with numbers.
Do you have any idea why it was given to you, when it was given to you?
I have opinions of why it was given to me.
But
Let me object to opinion.
do you know why? I mean, do you know why it was given to you?
Director Gray had asked to confirm if Richard Frank was placed on the reemployment list, would it prevent someone from being provisionally appointed to her position? And from that, I inferred the reasons for reemployment being granted to Richard Frank.
Okay, so she asked whether it would prevent someone from being provisionally appointed to that position
Correct.
if it were to become vacant.
Yes.
Okay, all right. I wanted to go back to the meeting at Chris's and the kind of the talk you guys were walking around prior to ending up at Chris's, right? And, was there any behavior that made you uncomfortable during that walk and talk with the director?
Yeah, Director Gray's a hugger. I don't like to be hugged. She wanted to be hugged several times in the course of the conversation.
Had you told her that you don't like?
Everyone knows that I don't like to be touched. Anyone that I work professionally with in a workspace knows that I don't like physical contact.
And you said that she was hugging you repeatedly?
Yeah, but it was, she was very upset. And for certain people, physical contact is a social reassurance,
Okay.
if that makes sense. So does touching make me uncomfortable? Yes. Is her seeking social comfort uncomfortable? No.
And you mentioned that after you met with her and John Ernestall on August 15th, remember we talked about that, you received calls from her after that.
Yes.
And have you, since that time, had you, since August 15th and after that, received multiple calls from the director?
The director and I talk often, yes. Yes.
So did she call you on your personal phone or your work phone?
She does a bounce, so she'll normally call me on my work phone first, and if for whatever reason I don't answer them, then she'll call me on my personal phone.
And on these calls then, after your meeting on August 15th, and you've kind of talked about these, but these were calls where she was wanting to talk about this incident.
Yes.
Okay. Did you find that the calls after you revealed to her what you learned on August 15th, the calls were more frequent after that than prior to that? Yes,
Significantly so, not just in frequency, but also in duration. And that's why I stopped answering her phone calls over the weekend, because I had expressed several times that I wanted to be alone. I didn't want to talk about this anymore. I just wanted to think about everything that had kind of transpired and where did that leave me in this situation. Because once the director said, yes, that's true, that happened to me, I like a flip of a switch, I became legally or ethically tied to this.
In the last couple of weeks, has the director spoken with you about either this incident, or has she spoken with you in the last couple of weeks?
I mean, yeah, we've talked. And she's, been making a lot of references, and this isn't something that's unique to me, but making references about, how long she'll be left here and how long she'll be here. And so every now and then she'll, as a way of showing appreciation or an acknowledgement of work, she'll say things that I consider to be more emotionally charged. Because I hope you know how much I appreciate you, and that I'm really going to miss you in the next place that I go, and I'm always going to be thinking of you, and things like that.
Did you feel like that was perhaps an attempt to affect your testimony?
I believe every conversation I've had with the director since I told her what Anthony said has been an attempt to socially manipulate me into handling the situation in a specific way.
That's all I have.
All right, you have to state a reason why you believe it's necessary for you to recross.
Well, he just referred to some new documents. He referred to some new conversations regarding this drunken driving business. And so I just have a few follow-up questions
All right,
about that.
That'll be allowed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, you just talked about the fact that you told the director that you were in a vehicle with Anthony that was a city vehicle where he was driving drunk, correct?
I said that the worst thing that Anthony could do to me would be to report that, yes, I was in a vehicle with him while he was drunk and I was drunk.
And both of you were drunk in a city vehicle?
Objection, asked and answered. We've gone over this before.
Sustained.
Well, he just opened this up about this discussion with Anthony about the two of them driving drunk in a city vehicle. That wasn't asked and answered.
Well, I asked her if any of that had anything to do with this proceeding.
Well, that's her opinion.
That was on redirect.
All right.
He
But
opened the door.
The question, as I understood, was simply, did you admit that you and Dr. Bird were both drunk in a city vehicle?
Yes.
All right. If that's all the question is, the objection's overruled.
Right, that's what you told the director, right?
Yes, that's what I said to the director, but that is not what I can testify in court.
Okay. So you lied to the director about you and Anthony
No,
driving drunk?
she said that Anthony was going to come for me, and I said that's fine. The worst thing that Anthony can do is say this, because I can't testify to what happened that night. I was drunk. I couldn't take my own property home. The only person who knows truly what happened would be Anthony.
Oh, and he was drunk too?
So I don't
No,
really.
was that a yes? Both you and he were drunk. He was the designated driver, but he was drunk as well.
I was blackout drunk. I was in a car with a person who I felt could drive. That's why I was in the car. That's why I wasn't driving my own vehicle, because I knew that I couldn't drive.
Okay, let me just end by showing you a page from Respondent Exhibit 3. And I'm going to show this to you. And that page is a page that talks about, says, I am going to get a rental car. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
And it said, it's not completely city business. You see that?
Yes.
And then that's fine. You see that?
Yes.
And you didn't see that in the text messages that Anthony showed you, did you?
No, I did not see text messages of Director Gray asking Anthony if it was okay for them to take the car on non-work related business.
Okay, all right. And he said, that's fine. You saw that response, right?
Yes.
All right. And so if she was relaying the fact that he said it was fine, even though it wasn't completely city business, in your view, that's her blaming Anthony?
There's
by
no
relaying those facts?
there's no timestamp on that. I don't know when those text messages were taken.
No, I understand that. Assume this has already been entered into evidence.
Okay.
And my simple question, and this will be my last question, is that if, in fact, he told her it was fine even if it wasn't completely city business, and she relays that to you and to the investigators, that's not blaming Anthony, that's just reporting the truth about what transpired, correct?
So, yes, but that is a small part of what overall happened. I mean,
Fair enough. Thank you.
All right, that concludes this witness. Yes. All right, the witness is excused. So, ready for your next witness?
Yes.
All right, you may call your next witness. And gentlemen, just so you know, it's 3:24, so we're only going to go for about 15 minutes at the most, right?
10 to 12 minute break.
Because we get the other, Civil Service Commission has its review of the city budget, pay plan that they have to get to.
Okay. We call Sarah Baker.
All right, so we'll just do as much as we can with her, and if you have your 35 minutes, you obviously wouldn't use the whole thing before we'd stop if you need that much, so. We are going to resume tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, all right? And then tomorrow, we'll go 10 to 12 roughly, and 1 to 4 roughly, okay? And so if we don't finish tomorrow, let's do this before because the commission is going to have to stop abruptly before we start this witness. Are the attorneys and witnesses available Monday? The commission's able to continue Monday.
okay, should I have this or?
We would not be available on Monday. I have actually a Court of Appeals argument Monday at 10 a.m.
Oh, wow. Court of Appeals, Missouri or federal?
Eastern District of Missouri.
Okay. Well, that's right here downtown. You can just come right. At any rate,
I'll zoom in here while I'm arguing.
there you go. Right. How about Tuesday?
I'm available.
And while he's checking, Mr. Harris, any estimate as to how many more witnesses you're going to have? We know you've said Mr. Boyd in addition to Ms. Baker.
Maybe 2 additional ones after that.
2 more, so we'll be doing that tomorrow, right?
Yeah, with so.
Probably, you
Mr.
think you'll
Boyd.
wrap up tomorrow then?
I think it's a good possibility.
Yeah. But then we haven't even gotten to the defense case yet, the respondent's case. Tuesday, okay?
No, we have challenges next week. I have some conflicts, and the director has conflicts.
Okay, Wednesday?
All next week.
All next week?
Either she
All
has a
next
conflict
week.
or I have a conflict.
All next week. All right. Did we talk about the following week? I think, how about the following week?
I could do 10.
The 11th works.
Not the 10th?
Not the 10th.
Mr. Harris, how about the 11th? It's a Tuesday.
If we do Tuesday, I have to start late.
How about 11? What time?
I can do 10:30.
10:30, all right. All right, so the next, after tomorrow, we would go to Tuesday, the 11th, starting at 10:30.
Yeah.
And we may or may not be at that point getting into Mr. Norwood's case. Mr. Norwood, any estimate on how many witnesses you're going to have?
Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, possibly 7, maybe 8.
Okay. All right, well,
So are we projecting this being finished? I unfortunately am not a billable hour type of guy. I have a full-time job yet. Are we wrapping up before February?
not before February.
I mean,
By the end of February.
we're already into the second week of February,
Right.
and we still have a list of 6 or 7 witnesses.
Well, I don't know
still.
how many more he has to call.
Well, those were yours. I was just going off of your number.
He said he
had
may
another
wrap up tomorrow. May wrap up tomorrow.
Okay, yeah, and so we have our time limit, so we're gonna work within our time limit.
Right, okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the conflicts for next week.
Next,
We have conflicts for next week, so we're looking at the 11th at 10:30.
the respondent says all of next week is out. So is the 11th, Tuesday the 11th, okay with you?
I mean, yeah, I can do Tuesday 11th.
Okay, how about, well, what? Huh?
12?
Wednesday the 12th then?
I mean, I just want to ask for the record. I mean, in the spirit of trying to get this done, we're going to miss a whole week.
Yes.
I mean, if there are conflicts, I understand conflicts for counsel. I get that. You got cases and stuff. But I mean, if there are conflicts for the parties, for the director, it seems to me, if it's work related, I guess I don't understand what that conflict would be. Because, I mean.
Mr. Norwood,
the work is right
next
here.
week, I know you said you had the Court of Appeals. How many of those days next week that you're not available, Tuesday and Wednesday, are you not available those days?
I am not available, and the director's not available, and then Fridays I teach a course in Columbia, so.
So both of you are not available Tuesday and Wednesday.
Right.
Well, Mr. Harris, so does that satisfy you?
No, but I mean,
All right. All right, let's just look at February 12th, Abraham Lincoln's birthday.
February
11th.
11th, no, we said the 11th was okay.
Oh, okay.
Right.
I'm saying the 12th for follow-up, we're not going to finish your case on the 11th. I'd love to, but just from what you said, I don't expect to.
The 12th is fine.
12th is fine with the appointing authority? 12th is okay with you both?
12th works for me.
12th is okay with you?
Well, there's a conflict for the 12th, which relates to a memorial service that the director has to attend.
Memorial for whom?
At what time is that? I gave up a doctor's appointment. I'm shifting my schedule. We can all try to make this, and I apologize for that loss.
Yeah.
I need to be sensitive to, this is not my job.
We need to be sensitive. We all do. So, is the 12th workable?
No, not for me, it's not.
The whole day?
Yes, because my mother is the memorial is in South Carolina. I'll be leaving out on Tuesday night, going to Greenville.
And back the next day? Well, what about the 13th? Is that bad?
That's my rescheduled
You
doctor
cannot-
appointment.
you
That
cannot
was
do that.
this week that I.
Right.
I've got one too.
All right, so 13th is out. 14th is Friday? Is that right?
Valentine's Day, sure.
Valentine's Day, all right. Everybody bring candy.
I'll be traveling on the 14th.
Not a happy commission.
No. All right.
Did we already looked at Monday the 10th?
Yeah. All right, how about the next Monday's the 17th? 17th, huh?
17th, the holiday.
Yeah, I believe so.
17th, the holiday, I think, isn't
I'm
it?
back in
President's
Day.
town until we get.
17th is a holiday.
I think it's a holiday, isn't it?
President's Day.
Yeah.
I don't get back until the 18th.
Back so that you would not be able to do
Yeah, I leave
something?
on Friday, the 14th, and come back on Tuesday, the 18th. So I could do, how's the 19th? The 19th works, or the 20th.
Wednesday, February 19th. Is that all right with you? No.
I have to check on some things on the 19th. I'll have to circle
19th,
back.
I could do.
Pardon me? You think?
19th.
All right, we will have to check on the 19th, and that'll be a week after the 11th. So, but if for some reason we cannot do the 19th, what about Thursday, the 20th?
It's fine for me.
Yeah, we can do the 20th. I'll have to
Both days?
change an appointment, but yeah, we can. do the
19th or the 20th, you mean?
Yeah. We held them both. And we're done.
Well, he said he couldn't do the 19th.
Oh, I thought that was settled.
Who said no, I'm sorry, the
19th, I
9th,
need to check. I have
He-
a meeting with my
he-
chancellor
okay.
that day.
it's possible the 19th is possible. So the 19th is possible, 20 is okay for everybody.
Yes,
Right?
on our end.
So let's hope and pray that that would be enough time among other those days. By the 11th, Mr. Flown
I'll
would
work
know
on that,
whether
sir.
or not the 19th would work or not, so we'd be able to say on that day for sure, but the following week, the plan would be either or both the 19th and 20th.
Yes,
Right.
that works for my schedule. And have we decided on the amount of time for closing?
We said 30.
30 minutes?
That's what we said. That's
Okay.
in our ruling, yes.
Thank you.
All right. All right, so with that, I think, you want to go start with Ms. Baker?
I mean, so.
Take about 10 minutes.
Okay, we can get
I
started.
mean, it's up to you. You know what questions you want to ask, so you'll have 25 to go after that, okay?
All right.
All right.
Okay. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name for the record?
Yes, my name is Sarah Baker.
Has she been sworn in?
Not
No,
yet.
she hasn't.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I didn't
Go
know
ahead.
the public
No,
counsel.
that's all right. You,
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you for
You're welcome.
pointing out that it hadn't been done yet.
Go ahead and state your name for the record.
My name is Sarah Baker.
What's your occupation
I'm the Deputy Chief of Staff
for the city of St. Louis?
for the Office of Mayor Jones.
Okay. And who's your supervisor?
Jared Boyd,
Okay, how long have you been with the city?
since July 6, 2021.
Okay. So I want to direct your attention to Monday, August 19th, 2024. Did you have occasion to receive a report regarding Personnel Director Sonia Jenkins Gray that day?
Yes, I did.
And who did you receive that report from? Who did you speak with?
I got a call from Bianca Lambert asking to meet, and so we met in my office. John Understall also attended.
And about what time of day was this?
Morning, like first thing.
All right, so you and Ms. Lambert and John Understall meet in your office?
Correct.
Was anyone else present for the meeting?
No.
And can you tell us what was reported to you in that meeting?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Bianca came to my office because she wanted to talk about the events that had happened Friday and over the weekend and give a report to me about what she had confirmed happening with Director Gray in a trip to Jefferson City.
Okay.
She relayed information about the nature of that trip. She talked about Anthony Byrd being the one to bring her that information. She had John Understall there to confirm the conversation that they had had with the director when the director said that she did take this trip for personal reasons.
And did Mr. Understall confirm that?
Yes.
And did they also relay to you about the director calling Anthony Byrd and putting him on speakerphone?
Yes, they said that after they had had their conversation with Director Gray, in which she had admitted that she had done this by taking the car to Jefferson City with Anthony Byrd, she put Anthony Byrd on speakerphone and asked him questions. I know these are in the statement, but they essentially go to the essence of loyalty.
Okay. Was this the first time you had heard about this?
Yes.
Okay. And what was your initial reaction to the information you were receiving?
I was surprised, and I was very concerned because if proven to be true, these would be offenses that would draw up serious concerns for me about the judgment of Director Gray.
Okay. And so based on the information that you had received, what did you do with that information?
I immediately reported the concerns to Jared Boyd, the Chief of Staff, and we also informed the City Councilor's office, Sheena Hamilton.
Okay. And then did you decide that you needed to speak with the director about this?
Yes, we did.
Okay. Because as you said, these were concerning facts that were reported to you, and if it turned out to be true, then it's a problem.
Correct.
Okay. And if it was what they were reporting to you, why would it have been a problem?
Well, it's a problem for numerous reasons. We knew right away that it would be wrongdoing by a government official if she had taken a city vehicle for personal reasons. It drew additional concerns because not only had she potentially done that, but she'd also taken a city employee with her for the entire day to do those actions. Okay. So it called into question judgment.
All right. So did you reach out to, did you contact the director to set up a meeting?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And when did you do that?
Sometime after the meeting with John and Bianca, and after I had told Jared and he had informed Sheena. So I'm sure there were a few hours in between.
Okay. So that same day?
That same day,
the 19th?
Yeah.
So you contacted the director, and were you able to set up a meeting with her?
Yes, we were able to meet with her that day.
Okay. Where did you meet?
We met in Jared's office.
And roughly about what time was this?
I think it might have been after lunch. I'm not sure. I recall the exact time.
Okay. And who all participated in the meeting?
Director Gray, Jared Boyd, and myself.
Okay. And in the meeting, did you all ask her about the allegations and the information that you had received?
Yes, we did. And she confirmed that they were accurate in that she had taken a city vehicle to Jefferson City with Anthony Byrd during city time.
Okay. And did she give an explanation as to what the trip was for?
She said that the allegation that we had been presented with from Bianca around, why she had taken the trip around her husband cheating, she did not confirm that later, but she did say it was personal reasons. She did say she was unhappy with what she found when she went on this trip to Jefferson City.
She told you that she was unhappy with what she found?
Correct.
Okay. And then what else did she say?
She blamed Anthony completely for taking the city vehicle in the sense that she said it was Anthony who took out the car.
And did that concern you?
Yes, because I wouldn't expect a supervisor to behave that way.
Okay. When you say behave that way, what do you mean?
I mean, I wouldn't expect a supervisor to take the word of a subordinate to take an action like that. That, to me, would be pretty obviously against not only city policy, but common sense.
Okay. And what else, if anything, did the director say in this meeting?
She confirmed that that the trip had happened. She talked about the text messages. She wanted to share a recording with us of something she had recorded of Anthony saying, but we did not listen to that in that conversation. We told her that we would be investigating the issue.
Did she say anything about wanting to, or saying that she was going to come clean?
She mentioned, and she mentions in her letter, that she was going to seek that she had sought the city vehicle policy from the comptroller's office.
Okay, all right. So you said that, when you heard the information from Bianca and John Understall, it was concerning to you and you needed to find out if, there was anything to it, right?
Yes.
And so after your meeting with the director and confronting her with the information you had and her response, what did you think after speaking with her?
We knew that we meaning me and Jared, knew that we needed to reach out to Anthony Byrd to see what had occurred. And we also knew that we needed to check the city vehicle log.
Okay. If it turned out at the time that this was true, that this conduct had in fact occurred, was there any way for you all to just forget about it and not do anything?
No, it was a pretty obvious case of misconduct.
Okay. What if let's say the expense for the vehicle, for the trip, the use of the vehicle, the miles, whatever, from St. Louis to Jefferson City and back, if the expense of that was just paid, was just reimbursed, given back paid to the comptroller's office, wouldn't that just settle it all?
It still did not ameliorate what she had done as far as taking the city vehicle in the first place, violating city policy, taking a city employee and a subordinate with her to Jefferson City on a trip for personal matters. Didn't change any of those, even if she had reimbursed the comptroller.
And then what about the idea that she, as you put it, was blaming Mr. Byrd?
I'm sorry, could you clarify that question?
So you said, paying back paying back money for the miles from St. Louis to Jeff City and back, that doesn't ameliorate all the other problems with the behavior.
Correct.
And I'm asking you, in addition to the things that you mentioned, what about the fact that she's blaming Anthony Byrd? Was that concerning as well?
That is concerning. She's the director of personnel. He's a subordinate. She's responsible for knowing policy.
Okay. And so you also said that you based on what you heard from Understall and Ms. Lambert, and then talking to the director, you had to do some more checking. You had to talk to Mr. Byrd, is that right?
Correct.
You all reached out to Mr. Byrd?
I did, yes.
Okay. And you said you had to, take a look at the vehicle log.
Mm-hmm.
Did you do that?
I didn't actually. Jared reached out to the comptroller's office regarding the vehicle log.
Okay. All right.
It's 3:45.
Okay.
Let's stop that.
All right.
Okay, so that'll be it for today. Ms. Baker, you need to be back to resume your testimony, and we said we'd be back tomorrow morning at 10. Okay, tomorrow morning at 10.
Okay.
All right, see you all then. We'll stop recording.